Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, I've got a Christmas miracle on our hands here. It is a Christmas gift for the masses. Cole Zwicker is back. He is back on the podcast. Cole, how's it been? It's been 5 months or so, maybe 4 months since I've talked to you on the podcast. I talked to you maybe 4 times, 5 times a week. But in general, how are you doing?
Doing well, man. I think it's the last time we left off. I think we were doing that mega prospect series that we broke down every division and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. Good to be back. Took some time off. Just a lot of real life scenarios at play. So it's good to be back producing content. And always enjoy talking with you on the podcast, man.
And let's be clear about this. These real life scenarios are not negative. Just I want people to know that it's not anything bad going on in your life.
Yeah, I'm glad you're in charge of this discussion, so it gets elicited in better fashion. But yes, absolutely, they're positive steps. But yeah, it's just really busy, and I couldn't really focus on creating content and also keeping up with the NBA and college basketball. So now I'm at a place where I can come back, kind of discuss it a little bit more, and have more free time.
And speaking of discussing all of this, what we're going to do on the podcast today, we're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns at the top because they've won 4 straight games. They've actually looked really interesting, and obviously for Cole and I, we like to discuss young players, and it's hard to find a team with more young players than the Phoenix Suns, I guess, in the NBA. Are they the youngest team in the NBA?
They have to be, aren't they? I mean, I don't know this. Yeah. I don't have the stats in front of me, but you would think so.
Yeah, they almost have to be.
Especially now.
Yeah, especially now that they've gotten rid of Trevor, too. We're going to move from there. We're going to talk about all of the NBA rookies this season. Cole and I talked for hours at length on this podcast about the NBA rookies leading into the draft. So it's going to be interesting to get his perspective. I guess we're 2 months into the season. We're going to be able to really get a 30 game, 1/3 of the season look at some of these guys and, kind of hear where he's at on them. And then finally, we're going to move into this year's draft and just get early indications on where we're all at on this. So Cole, let's start with the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, like I said, have won 4 games in a row. They are 8-24. They are still just in nowhere near competitive mode in the Western Conference. They're still 6 games out from the 14th seed because the Western Conference is just insane. But where are we at on Phoenix now that they've kind of started to, I don't want to say they figured things out. I mean, 2 weeks ago, they were just losing games by 25 points every other night, basically, it seemed like. But they have kind of pulled some things together, it looks like, a little bit. So let's just kind of start as an overall view. Where are your thoughts on the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a lot of them this year, like you alluded to, because of the prospects. They just have so many guys, young players on their team. They're fascinating to watch how they develop over time. My read on the Suns is that they're not a competitive team. They're not good, but they're much better than their record indicates. I think they're better than all 4 of the bottom 4 teams in the East, meaning New York, Cleveland, Atlanta, and Chicago, as currently constructed at this juncture. I just think it took them 25 plus games to figure it out. They started Isaiah Cannon from the off with Ryan Anderson. Cannon should have not even been in the rotation. So giving those minutes to guys like Mikal Bridges, DeAnthony Melton over time, it makes sense now. My overarching take is their roster makes sense now. They identified what their strengths are, which is they have a ton of wing-sized players, especially acquiring Kelly Oubre as well. They're building defense around Devin Booker, so they're starting Melton there. Gives them a little bit of an added playmaking incentive there. If you watch, I think the Suns played the Sixers on the road earlier this year, and it was basically Devin Booker and James Harden roll. It was basically spread, pick, and roll every single time. They had nobody else that could create anything on the wings. Ariza couldn't. Mikal, that's not really his game. Josh Jackson, they couldn't really rely on him there. So overall, I think that they figured it out. Melton gives them a little bit more of an added playmaking dynamic. I thought he's been pretty good in pick and roll, pass out situations. And overall, it's just you have 8 at the 5, you surround him with wings. They switch a lot. That Boston game the other night, they were switching everything. Their length with Mikal and Oubre was terrifying in passing lanes and stuff like that. So they didn't make any sense when the season started rotation-wise, personnel. I think now they have the personnel and the talent to actually start winning some games.
So yeah, I don't know that they're going to start winning a lot of games, but I think that they're going to, maybe from here on out, I think that their Vegas over-under was 32 or something coming into the year, which in general was probably, I mean, obviously it was way too high given what they're at right now, but like I thought that their under was a pretty safe bet coming into the year. And I would bet you that from this stage forward, they probably do play more like a 32-ish win does, unless they just like totally tank at the end of the season, which, you know, might make sense in the race for Zion, although there is lottery reform this year. So it's instead of the top 3 teams, it's now a top 5 lottery situation. Although that might even increase tanking in some ways because teams want to get pick certainty in the top 6 as opposed to falling out. We'll discuss that at some other point whenever that gets closer. But Devin Booker, I think, has taken a really nice little step forward this year as a playmaker. Like, he's shooting 32% from 3, I think in large part due to the injury in the early season. It just took him a while, and then he obviously missed some games recently as well. I assume that once he gets healthy, the shooting is going to rebound because everything else looks like it kind of has taken a leap. Like, he is definitely taken a leap as a pick and roll passer. That is number one where I'm looking. I'm just like, holy hell, this guy might actually be like James Harden light. You know what I mean? He's not there. He's probably not going to be James Harden just because James Harden is ridiculous in terms of being able to just spread pick and roll and pull up from 3. Like, I think that right now James Harden has made twice as many unassisted 3-pointers as literally any other player in the NBA so far this season. I would severely doubt that Devin Booker ever gets to that level. But what he could do is, I think I am a little bit more comfortable with just putting the ball in Devin Booker's hands, having him act as a pseudo point guard, lead guard, and letting him make decisions because he's looked pretty good. The turnovers have been like a small issue, but he's looked pretty good regardless in making decisions.
And I think that was always the key to him. We talked about this in the past in the podcast. If you put him in that role, I mean, you're maxing this guy out right now financially. You want to get that return on investment, and the best way to do that is to give the ball to him and let him be the playmaker. And he's really developed over the last 2 seasons, and I was really hard on him the first 2 years. I'll be fully, I'll admit that for sure. Like,
I think both of us were.
I don't really like that archetype. Traditionally, the guys who are just like the off-ball kind of scorers who are bad defensive players, but he's morphed into more of a lead guard type, and I have been pushing that. Like, if you're going to get value out of this guy, and it's one all-encompassing stat via real plus minus, but this is the first year he's been a positive player, and I think you can draw conclusions to an extent about that and his role being like he's a playmaker now. He's the guy to give the ball to. He can make all the reads and pick and roll, basically all of them. I've been really impressed with his decision making, his vision. He's just really improved. The guy's competitive. You can tell in his approach that he really cares. And I think that he has that in his outcome where he can be like a potential championship level player. I think the defense, he's played better recently. I still got to see that get to a level where it's respectable in the playoffs, but at least he has positional size. Like, he's 6'6". He's not going to be like this 6'2" guard that just gets killed every single time. But if he plays better defense, I think the Suns have a legit kind of potential franchise guy, to use like a popular nomenclature, I guess.
Well, yeah, he's easier to hide defensively. Like, there's a world 2 years, 3 years down the road, I think, whenever they're like truly competing, maybe, like, I would imagine like that's their goal. In 3 years, they want to be competing in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
DeAndre Ayton is, right when his rookie contract comes up and they have to consider extending him at some point, they're going to want to be in a place where they can go out and try and add like another star via free agency. Like, that's kind of the cycle that they're on right now. And with Devin, the key is that in 3 years, maybe he adds 10 pounds over those 3 years. He gets up to like 220, 225, and you could throw him on like 4s, maybe even, just to hide him. Like, you want to be able to put him on the worst opposition wing player, perimeter player, and his 6'6" size, his strength improvement over the course of the last 3 years, really, it's been huge to be able to just make him not as problematic defensively as he's been in the past.
Absolutely. And I think like with the insurgents or McHale coming into the lineup, DeAnthony Melton, Rashawn Holmes has been huge for them this year as like an energy guy off the bench. Like, he plays really hard defensively. When you start surrounding Booker with guys that really try, that was the problem earlier this season, is like Tyson Chandler didn't give a fuck. Like, Trevor Ariza didn't always play hard. Ryan Anderson isn't going to set the tone defensively. Like, this is why I think that like this is the fit for Zion, in my opinion. Like, if they get Zion, they can move to the next step because he answers so many questions. He fills in so many need areas for them. If they get him, I think they're looking at a 3-star potential infrastructure. We'll see how the defense develops. That's clearly the biggest issue with this team moving forward, I think, is like their defensive ceiling. But overall, I think that you can at least see the ingredients now, and I totally agree. Booker has taken a legit step, and he's become a player that not a lot of players can get to. I initially thought maybe this is a CJ McCollum type player. He's taken his playmaking to the next level. It's great to see.
Yeah, so let's move on. I'm gonna save DeAndre for last, because DeAndre, you and I have talked about him a million times, and it'll go in nicely into the second part of our discussion when we're going to talk about the rookies in this class. It's worth kind of going into the wings, though, I think, because Mikal Bridges, I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Mikal Bridges early this season. And again, he's still not hitting threes yet. Like, I have faith that guy is going to hit threes at some point in his career, probably starting like next year, even maybe even later this year. But he's still only shooting 33%, and he's making a legit positive impact when he's on the floor, just via his length, via being able to disrupt guys with his hands. He's a very smart positional defender. We have seen some of the like small questions I had in terms of his being able to stay in front of guys, but I'm okay with that. Like, I'm actually pretty okay with what I've seen from him, especially if you're going to play him next to Devin Booker.
100%. Yeah, I think that there's clear weaknesses here. I mean, they were always there in college. Like, he's not the most switchable guy. He's not very strong. He's not like a wing stopper. He's more of like an off-ball defender who makes great decisions, and he can switch, and then his length is just absolutely... He's so good at utilizing his length. Gets a lot of steals on the ball, off the ball, deflections. You can just go a long way with a 6'6" guy with a 7'2" wingspan who knows where...
What I think he is he might be like Robert Covington. He might be like the newer Robert Covington, right?
Exactly right, but like more of a 2-3 than a 3-4.
Right.
Like, he's not as big as Covington, but that's exactly the conceptual idea of him. Is like those guys are just positive players, like guys who know where to be. They are great team defenders, and they disrupt a lot of things. Like, Mikal disrupts with his length. He changes plays. He saves the Suns' possessions and points on that end just by being smart. And then offensively, he doesn't use possessions. He's basically a spot-up guy. I think Igor can do a little bit better of a job utilizing him off motion. Like, he can come down off a pin-down curl and like shoot over the top. He can dribble and like pull up off the dribble a little bit. He's been a lot of like corner 3-point shooter for a lot of the season, which is fine. His mechanics are irritating me, frankly. Like, he speeds up his release when he's contested, but when you notice if he's open, it's really slow, and he does it on purpose. And I've never seen anything like it before. And it seems like he shoots worse when he does that. It's just very irritating. But yeah, I think that the shot will come around eventually. And it's just like those kinds of guys are winning players. Like, I get all the weaknesses. I think eventually the Suns are going to need a bigger wing that can really like guard those bigger small forwards in the league. They're going to need that because Mikal is ideally placed in the backcourt next to Booker, and he can kind of just fill in the gaps. If they get that stopper, I think Mikal even makes more sense than he already does, which is, again, a very conducive player to winning basketball.
Yeah, you need like a secondary front court ball handler almost if you're going to get the most out of him playing next to Booker in the backcourt. Zion. But like I don't even know if Zion qualifies for that like totally. Like I think you even might need like another guy who makes really, really good decisions with the basketball and can actually like break pressure and get you into your set at like the 18-second mark. Once you get into the half court, like otherwise I'm a little bit worried about that. But Mikal's been really good. Josh Jackson has been a mess. Actually, real quick on Mikal's shooting mechanics, because I find them very interesting too. They started to change pre-draft, and I don't know why. I don't know why anyone fucked with his shooting mechanics. I don't know.
Why would you?
It was probably him. Like I'm assuming at some point it was his decision to do this. I don't know why they fucked with his shooting mechanics. He was like a consistent 40% 3-point shooter in college, but yeah, he needs to not do that.
Yeah, like go watch the Marquette game from last year where he was coming off like down screens and like flare screens from like 28 feet and just sinking, pull-up jumpers, you know what I mean? Or off movement and stuff like that. It's just, you didn't need to tinker with anything. Like he was a legit shooter. And now it's just like he's inconsistent with his release speed. I just don't understand it.
Yeah. So Josh Jackson has been kind of a mess this year. He has been like slightly better over the course of the last like 3 weeks, and it's been very slight, but it's been a little bit better. If you remember last season, he started really, really poorly too, for whatever reason. Where are you at with Josh? Like, I don't feel great about him. I'm not going to lie to you. I really don't feel good about him at all, but I'll give you the floor.
I mean, it's not a direct comparison, but how I approached Josh coming into the draft was like, this guy could be like a legit secondary creator. We saw some of the winning plays he did at Kansas, and like, oh, this guy can fill in the gaps. He's like someone who maybe you can stagger with Devin Booker and he can kind of run the playmaking. And then it hasn't really materialized that way. Like, he just doesn't make good decisions on the floor. He takes terrible shots. I mean, against Boston, he was hitting like these step back jumpers off the dribble, and it's like, okay, he hasn't made those all year. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want him taking those shots. But I will give him credit for this. And like, the guy is playing fucking hard recently. Like, he's really playing hard, and he's got difference making athleticism on the floor. Like, as far as just on, like, the first step isn't there offensively, a lot of it functionally isn't there, but when he tries defensively, like, he's really fast, he's super athletic, he can cause events, and that is kind of how he's progressed as a player. Like, you don't want him in like this high usage offensive role where he has playmaking duties. It's more like he's an ancillary player next to high, usage guys like Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and he's just kind of a fill in the gaps guy who plays hard. It's kind of like the same arc as DeAndre Bembry a little bit, not the same player, but Bembry came into the league. I was really high in his decision making, and now he's kind of a wild player, but his energy is just infectious. Like, he comes in games and he literally just goes hard for 6-minute stints, and it kind of changes the game a little bit for Atlanta, and that's kind of how I see Josh.
Well, it's a lot easier to be that guy though when you are a 2-star recruit who went to St. Joe's and then like were like the 21st overall pick or something, whatever DeAndre was. Like, Josh Jackson has been told his entire life that he's the star. And I think that that's a difficult adjustment. You know what I mean? Like, it's very difficult to say, hey, Josh, we need you to come off the bench and just like kind of make shit happen. And he is super competitive. He is like the quintessential winner, I guess, like in a lot of ways. Like, he has that kind of competitive drive, that fire, that mentality that he does want to really help the team. So like, that'll help him kind of move into this role. And he's still only 21. So like, maybe you hope that this turns around, but like the problem is the shooting and the just efficiency as a scorer. It's just not there in the half court. Like, he's a difference maker in transition offensively. He's just not a difference maker. He's like a guy you don't have to guard in the half court offensively.
Yeah, if you outline skills that are valuable for wings, it's mostly off movement shooting and team defense. And he doesn't have the off movement shooting. He doesn't even have the spot up shooting. And that's the issue with him, is like, he just doesn't contribute in a lot of the reads. He can make skip passes when he's unselfish. He can be an effective player. It's just when you start giving him that scoring usage, that's when he gets derailed.
Yeah. Let's just move on because this is making me sad. Kelly Oubre is very fun too. I like Kelly Oubre. I think I'm higher on Kelly Oubre than like the general consensus is. I look at him as someone who is basically everything I'm looking for except as a shooter. Like, I think he's actually gotten a lot better defensively than what he was as a younger player and as a player entering the to use his length a little bit better, especially whenever they play him down at the 4, or at least did in Washington. I did not watch his debut. I know that he ended up having pretty solid 2 blocks. He had a steal. He had 13 and 6. But I actually really like this move for them. I thought it was smart. I know that they're going to have to make a decision on whether or not they want to pay him, but I think he actually really helps them.
I like it because it reinforces their identity, and that's what they've lacked all season. Like, the Kings have an identity. Like, those guys get up and down. They base their identity off De'Aaron Fox's speed, and that's something the Suns haven't had. They've been kind of in and out. They've had Ryan Anderson in the starting lineup. You can't really switch with him. Cannon, of course, doesn't really do anything positive on the floor. So now they have just a bunch of wings that are really interchangeable, and they can switch a lot. You saw them against Boston. Like, down the stretch, like, they were terrifying. Their length, like, again, McHale and Oubre, like, their length really matters. And I think that identity part, being able to just go, okay, we're going to go point Booker and then put 3 wings and then DeAndre Ayton, that makes sense to me. And so that's why I like the Oubre deal, is that it adds their identity. I don't like it if it was like a preordained decision that they're going to extend him no matter what. Like, if they're like, oh, we need to get something for Trevor Ariza, so let's trade for Oubre and we're going to pay him $15 million regardless. Like, I'm not with that, but as like a trial right now, I think this is the perfect kind of player to get into your locker room. A guy who's had some character issues in Washington. You get him into your locker room, you see what he is as far as his mental makeup. He's a wing who can play conceptually both sides of the floor. I think this is exactly the kind of test case you want to take a chance on. From
what I understand, like, it's not like a character thing where he is like is kind of in his own world.
That's fair.
Yeah, so like I don't like. I think that he's the kind of guy where, like, whenever you say like character issues, like his issues are the kind that you want to bet on. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm not saying he's like a bad guy. Just that I'm just going by conceptual rumors and stuff like that. Like, he wasn't like, I guess, always focused and all of that. Like there was something missing, I would say, with his approach to the game.
Sure.
And as much as Phoenix can find out about that over the next remainder of the season and then make a decision that's an informed decision this summer, I think that's the way to approach it.
All right, and let's get into these last two young guys because, well, before that, is Dragan done? You think Dragan's done, right?
I mean, it's not a great sign that he's not getting minutes on this team, especially in the beginning of the season where Igor is really just rotating a bunch of guys in and out. Elia Kobo was in and out. Like they were just trying to find some kind of identity and consistent rotations, and it's not a great sign that he wasn't a part of that.
Yeah, I think Dragan is, at least in Phoenix, I think he's done.
Yeah.
And I think he should probably go over to Europe and develop for a few years. There will be plenty of teams in Europe that are willing to facilitate that, in my opinion, given that he'll only be 22 after next year. Sure. To me, that makes sense. Let's talk about the last two guys here, because they're the two guys that I don't know if we disagreed on De'Anthony Melton, like, totally. I think that we both had the same conception of his game. I think you were a little bit higher on his offense than I was, and that's why you had him as like a late lottery grade, correct?
Yeah, I think I had him 13th or something like that.
Right, and I had him early to mid 20s or so, in large part because of that small difference in their offense. And it's funny because so far in his early career, where he's played 15 games and is starting games now for Phoenix, a lot of what you liked about him and a lot of the concerns that I had about him, everything has kind of shown up so far. It's very fascinating. I was worried about the jumper and I was worried about his ability to score efficiently. Well, he's shooting 38% and he has a 33% 3-point percentage. You really liked the way that he could be a secondary ball handler who defended, and can really distribute out of pick and roll, and had a lot of potential to do very nice role player things. He's done all of that so far as a 20-year-old rookie who is, again, starting for an NBA basketball team after not playing at all last season. That's the other crazy thing. He didn't get to play last season, so he's behind the 8 ball to begin with in terms of just being in game shape from a thought standpoint, where you're you developed over the course of a season, and then you take the summer off, you're in a rhythm, and then you come back and you get better. He had to take all of last year off. It's totally different.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, there was an adjustment period. And I thought he looked actually a little uneasy in the beginning, in preseason, and then a little bit in terms of when he started off this year in his intermittent minutes. I didn't think he looked that comfortable with the ball. His handle didn't look as tight as I expected. And then recently, he really has looked a lot more comfortable in pick and roll. He's keeping guys in jail, making pretty damn good decisions with the ball. And that's what I always liked about him, is on both ends of the court, he's very smart, very instinctual. I thought a little bit in the terms of the beginning of the season, he was kind of going through the motions, trying to learn Igor's offense, especially in preseason. He's an instinctual player. He's not someone who's going to pop in a workout one-on-one, but when you put him in a 5-on-5 setting, he just makes plays. And that's what his appeal is for me. He's going to have to shoot better, of course, off the catch. He's looked confident, though. There's no hesitation. We saw that even at the Combine, so that's great to see. But I think the overall appeal of him, in theory, is that he makes a lot of sense next to Devin Booker.
Yeah,
because he can defend. He can defend. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to agree with you. I thought you were done talking. He defends, he is a secondary playmaker, all of that I think is exactly what you want next to Devin Booker. That's if you're going to play Devin at the 2, and I think there are going to be times where you want to play Devin off the ball. You are going to want to still run Devin off of screens because he's really good at coming off of screens and shooting off of movement. Right now,
yep.
Phoenix doesn't really have anyone else to get them in and out of their offense unless they play De'Anthony there, so you can't really do that kind of stuff. I don't know if you're going to close with De'Anthony if your ultimate goal necessarily is to play Devin Booker as point Devin, but that's fine. Having a guy that you can trust for 25 to 30 minutes a night, maybe 25 a night, let's say, if he's coming off the bench as a sixth man who you use next to Booker in spurts and then run the second unit, that's totally valuable, first and foremost. And second, it's just a perfect fit in so many ways, as you said.
Yeah, and they haven't been closing with De'Anthony. He starts games and he starts the third quarter, but they usually close with point Book, and they go. I haven't mentioned T.J. Warren. We haven't mentioned him. He's been awesome this year as a shooter. I mean, that's something we got to bring up. Is his shooting improvement this year has been phenomenal. But they've been closing with him, a combination of him, McHale, and just really doing that point Book thing. But I think in theory, De'Anthony makes a ton of sense. The defensive versatility, he switched on to Tatum 2 times in the recent matchup, and he contested 1 shot. Got a little bit of help from 8 and 1, but you can see the versatility there. And I've been hammering this point throughout the entire process with Booker and with Mel. Melton. Like, you don't need Kemba Walker next to Devin Booker. I mean, of course, Kemba is incredible, but you want to fixate on defense, because if you get a point guard that can't defend next to Booker, you're going to cap yourself too much defensively. It's like the Portland Trailblazer situation with CJ and Dame. Those are great players, but how far can you really get with them two in the backcourt? So I think the Suns are smart here in fixating on Melton's defense next to Booker. Whatever you want to call them, point guard. I mean, Devin really is the point guard, and Melton's the secondary ball handler, whatever you want to call him. But I totally agree with your point about you just need a guy at times that can handle and initiate an offense and let Devin kind of score off the ball. And Melton can do that in ways that Mikal can't, that Josh can't, that Trevor couldn't. So that's the appeal with him.
Yeah, and you mentioned T.J. Warren, and by T.J. Warren you mean younger than Buddy Hield T.J. Warren.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah,
T.J. Warren, now in his 5th NBA season, is younger than Buddy Hield. Shout out T.J. Warren, and shout out Buddy Hield for. I don't really think he hid the fact that he was 25 or 26. It does seem like an honest mistake in many ways, but hey, good for Buddy. Good for.
I tweeted earlier this year about TJ Warren. Like, I'm waiting for the big reveal when we find out that Ray Allen's been Arya Starking TJ Warren all season, because like I don't know what the hell is up with this guy, but he doesn't miss shots off the catch anymore. He's hitting everything from 3.
And he's shooting 87% from the line too. Like this, I really think that like this is just a new skill. And by the way, like a guy who has like the floater game that TJ has always had, like those guys very clearly have incredible touch. It is impossible to have that kind of floater game without having the touch that he has. And this is a guy that over the last 2 years has shot like 76% from the foul line. And I don't know, like I buy it to an extent that I don't think he's like a 44% 3-point shooter, just because very, 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 very few are. But if he's like a 39% 3-point shooter, I wouldn't be like wildly shocked in terms of true talent.
I'm still pretty certain that he's Ray Allen, but like it's pretty incredible. Like this development is one of those. You hit the nail on the head. It's the touch. It's the touch development that he's had. De'Aaron Fox has taken that leap a little bit this year. I think you can attribute that a lot to touch. Like he did have those runners. He has good touch on the move and stuff like that. And sometimes with shooters, that's all it takes. You just over time you develop it.
It's actually a good question. Do we remember De'Aaron having good touch on floaters coming into the draft?
I do, yeah. I was just at that point in the draft, it was more like I devalued floaters for being an inefficient shot, but really as a proxy for touch, I don't think I gave nearly enough credit for Fox for that. I mean, I'm not saying his touch is like nuclear, like it wasn't like Trae Young touch, but I did remember it being pretty good. Like he had an intermediate game and he did show that ability.
Right, like I'm wondering if we should like start like considering that more when trying to figure out, can this guy like really improve as a shooter long term? And Maybe. Yep. I'm not saying we don't consider it now, but like maybe we should consider it more than what we do now.
Very much agree. I think looking back at my own evaluations in the past, I think that's where a lot get derailed, is not fixating enough on just. I mean, shooting is fickle. Let's be clear about that. It's a very fickle skill. And sometimes you just can't predict progressions there. It's the most important skill, but it's also the hardest to predict when like looking at mechanics and all that stuff. But I do think you're exactly right. Like we should probably give more emphasis on just general touch. That's something that Mike Schmitz, I think, has done a pretty good job of in the past. Like he's very vocal about the touch aspect.
Yeah. Mike's great. I love Mike. I saw him at the G League Showcase. Talked to him for a little while. Mike's the best.
There you go.
All right, let's get an ad in before we move into this next portion, because oh boy, you and I, when we talk about DeAndre Ayton, we tend to talk for a while. Policy Genius is, look, life insurance is a deeply unfun topic. We know this. Most people don't like thinking about dying, and they definitely don't want to think about insurance when it comes to dying. But actually having life insurance feels great, and getting that peace of mind doesn't need to be complicated. Policy Genius is the easiest way to get life insurance. In minutes, you can compare quotes from top insurers to find the coverage you need at a price you can afford. From there, you can apply online, and the unbiased observers at Policy Genius will handle all the red tape, leaving you free to do the things you actually enjoy. If you've been intimidated or frustrated by insurance in the past, give Policy Genius a try. Just go to policygenius.com to get your quotes and apply in minutes. You can do the whole thing on your phone right now. Policy Genius, the easy way to compare and buy life insurance. All right, DeAndre Ayton, the DeAndre Ayton of it all. I've been pretty clear that I've really, really liked what I've seen from DeAndre Ayton this year. I think he's actually been like very, very good. I understand that the defensive questions are still there, but at the end of the day, this is a 20-year-old dude who is averaging 16 points, 10 rebounds, 2.3 assists on a 61.5 true shooting percentage. And, like, I'm willing to live with the growing pains on the defensive end at some point. Like, look, if he's going to do that at 20, I'm comfortable just being, you know what, take the year, learn, and see what you can do, and then we'll evaluate you next year defensively.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear again in my position because I haven't been on the podcast in a while. I think DeAndre Ayton is good. Like,
yes.
I'm not saying he's a bad player.
No, I want to, you had DeAndre at, like, 4 on your board. Like, you were not sitting here going, DeAndre is bad.
Yeah, and honestly, it was the other guys that I just bought more. You know what I mean? Like, it was Luka, and he's been phenomenal. Jaren's been great. Like, we're going to talk about the rest of the class. It was that more than it was DeAndre's bad. I think it's been kind of in vogue to crush Ayton as far as defense, especially. Like, every time he doesn't make a rotation, it gets on Twitter, and, like, people retweet it. It's like, oh, this guy sucks on defense. It's like, well, what do you expect? Like, you had a bunch of guys. I mean, this has been on his tape for, like, ever. This is a thing. Like, he's going to have to improve this. You can't expect him just to come into the league in 20 games and figure everything out. That doesn't happen that way. So,
right. And, I mean, even as someone that was, like, I was high on his defense because I really liked the switchability defensively for a guy that was his size. Like, even I called that out. Like, look, this guy is late rotating. Sometimes he just doesn't make the rotation. You have to learn. You have to hope that he'll figure it out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that he has improved over the season. Like, these last couple of games, he's playing harder. And that's the thing about him is, like, when he plays hard, like, he has great movement skills for his size. Like, he can really make a difference. When you're 7 feet tall and you have that wingspan and you have the strength, like, you can make a difference on the defensive end. Like, you're still going to fuck up at times on rotations and you're going to lapse, and he doesn't react quickly to actions, but you can at least switch. Like, he had a play against Giannis late in the game against Milwaukee where he legit switched onto him and contained a drive. Like, he can do that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's his values. When the play's in front of him, he can actually do things. Contesting, guarding the perimeter. So I think that the hate has gone a little bit too far on him. He's been exactly what I expected. Outside of the passing, I think has been better than expected. How do you feel on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think his passing has been a little bit better than expected. I think overall his offensive efficiency has been better than I expected. Like, even on, like, post-ups and stuff, like, I didn't expect him to come in and be as efficient as he is. Like, I thought that, like, he would average, I think I said, like, 15 and 9, 15 and 10 this year. Because I thought immediately he would be, like, an elite rebounder because he just has that instinctual ability. Plus, he has the physical tools. I figured that would be true. But I figured it would be on, like, a 57 true shooting percentage because he's still, like, he takes those terrible, like, mid-range jumpers, and he still does that from time to time. Like, it's something that will continue to be a part of his game where instead of trying to post hard, he might be willing to, like, get on the left block, face up, and then go for like a 15-foot jumper instead of trying to, like, really pass it out and then reestablish position or something because he knows he might not get the ball back. He's done less of that than I expected, though. I guess is what I would say. He's done a little bit less of that, like, shitty mid-range jumper than I thought. He's been more dominant as a position establishing big who just gets deep position consistently. And he's just been more efficient offensively than what I figured he would be.
Yeah, I think this also ties into the touch conversation we were having. Like, him and Bol, probably the two best touch guys I've seen for bigs. Like, they're different. I think Bol's touch is just insane, especially because he can project it. He can kind of push it out to 3, where Ayton has flatter mechanics. But Ayton has tremendous touch. Yeah. And that's something, like, he siphons off so many easy points. And I'm not meaning that as an insult. Like, within the realm of play, like, he'll just get advantage points in the game. Like, he'll get like, a deep catch and just hook shot you. Even, like, not design plays, though. Like, he just will finish everything near the rim because his touch is so elite, and he doesn't need to use possessions that way. He doesn't have to be a focal point of the offense. He can just kind of, you look up and he has 24 and 18 or something like that. That's what he does kind of routinely. You don't really notice the impact necessarily, but you look at the box score and it's like, holy shit, the guy has 24 points and he's only missed like 4 shots because his touch is so good. So I do like the way Igor's utilized him, mostly as like a dive guy. We've seen a lot of his gravity as a roller going back to summer league, and like we're like, yeah, he can do more, but it's nice that Igor's trying to build him up kind of from the bottom up on defense too, trying to get him just to start with the basics. Like, it's funny that Ayton's such a good rebounder because he doesn't box out consistently at all. He just high points. He's so dominant with his size that he can do that. So there's just a lot of areas that he can improve. Sometimes he frustrates the living hell out of me defensively. He'll like switch onto a guy and he'll be trying to retreat and like recover and block a shot, and he won't even contest the shot, and he's like right next to the ball. It's like you just want to shake him because the physical ability is there. Like he's there on the play. Like he has the movement skills to stick with these guys. He just doesn't finish the play. I don't know if that will come. Honestly, I have no idea, but that's going to be the difference between him being a very good player and him being a potentially elite player.
Yeah, no, I think that I agree with you on all of that. I am at the point where I am just like, would you say that he is a franchise player in your mind? From what you've seen so far, would you say that like you believe this guy can, be like the number one option on a good playoff team?
I don't think I'm there, just because if you're more of a traditional big like he is, I mean, the passing helps a lot. I'm going to be very frank about that. But if you're more of like an interior big, like there's times where you can deny him the ball and he can't really impact the play. And that's why you look to defense a lot with bigs and say, can you be a franchise player? I think it starts on that end. Still have a lot of questions. So I'm not there, but I do think there's a lot to work with. Like it's within his realm of outcomes, but I'm not willing to necessarily say that at this juncture. Would
you say that he will make an all-NBA team?
I thought you were going to ask me all-star. I was like, yes. No. All-NBA. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess if I had to bet on it, I'm very on the fence, as you can see. Like, probably. I don't know. It's very. That's a great question. Definitely all-star. I think he's going to be a multi-time all-star. I'm not sure about all-NBA.
I would say he's going to be a multi-time all-NBA player. I am there on that. Whether or not he is like I don't know that he'll ever be as like wholly valuable as Nikola Jokic is now necessarily, and like Jokic is like a pretty solid all-NBA player this year, I would say, right?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, like he definitely should be on the all-NBA team. Like I don't know if he'll be quite as valuable as that, but I think that at some point he will be on the all-NBA team, be it like a second team, third team, something like that. And I think he'll do it a couple times at least.
Not unreasonable. I'm not quite there. I don't like. Again, Jokic is an outlier as far as his offense. Like I don't think Ayton's ever going to be that
players
good.
Too.
Yes, 100%. Like, yeah, you're trying to capture like value and stuff like that. I get the argument for sure. You're definitely on the upper end of the Ayton discussion as far as being pro Ayton, which is fine. I think there's definitely outcomes for him to be that. I'm just not quite sold on it yet.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. DeAndre Ayton's definitely an investment, but Robinhood is an even bigger investment. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission free. They strive to make financial services work for everyone, not just the wealthy. It's a non-intimidating way for stock market newcomers to invest for the first time with true confidence. It's simple and intuitive. There's a clear design with data presented in an easy to digest way. I can't emphasize this enough. I'm a big Robinhood fan just because the user interface is amazing. It is so simple to operate. There are charts that are just so easy to understand. Market data is just so top notch on Robinhood, and you can place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. The web platform also lets you view stock collections, so like the 100 most popular, or entertainment stocks, or social media, or curated categories, like if you believe in companies that are run by female CEOs. It's just a really, really terrific app. And again, I can't emphasize enough. There is, other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, but Robinhood doesn't charge commission fees. You trade stocks and you keep all of the profits. Here is what I can tell you. Robinhood is giving listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio. Sign up at gametheory.robinhood.com. That's gametheory.robinhood.com, and you will get that free stock, such as an Apple, Ford, or Sprint, to help you build that portfolio out. Let's talk about the rookies, man. The rookies have been really fun. It's been a great rookie class, I think. There's really nothing. There's not much to be disappointed about with this rookie class, right?
I love this class. I think they've lived up to every bit of the expectations, and I think they're the best class over the last 3-4 years. And 2017 got all the hype, but I think this is the real class right here.
Yeah, and we loved this class coming into the draft too. Like we thought that this was a very, very strong draft. Like we had guys, like we were saying that we had DeAndre Ayton. I thought he was an All NBA player coming in. Luka Doncic, you and I both thought was an All NBA player. I thought Jaren Jackson was an All Star. You thought he had potential certainly to be an All-NBA player. I was higher on Marvin Bagley. I still think that guy's probably going to make an All-Star game at some point. You were super high on Trae Young, thinking he was going to be an All-Star point guard. I obviously thought Trae was going to be really, really good as well. There are just a lot of high upside guys, a lot of talented guys that you could trust to come in and play a role immediately. I'm just super enthused about this rookie class, and I guess that the place to start, I understand why Luka has gotten as much credit as he has gotten. He's unbelievable. He's incredible. But I guess I'm also at the point where I don't know what to add to the conversation about Luka either, because you and I have talked about him at length, and he's doing basically everything that we expected him to do. Like, he's just this unbelievable pick and roll playmaker who is incredible, who can post smaller guards, who can hit the cross corner pass with ease, who's a better shooter than what his percentages at Real said. Like,
yep.
There's nothing new with Luka, I guess, for people who scouted him.
Oh, 100%. And I think I even get that response too when I tweet about him. People respond to me like, we already knew that. And I was like, yeah, I really have nothing else to say. Like, I made a point about, it's kind of funny, like pre-draft people are like, oh, he has to rely on the step back, when the conversation should have been, holy shit, that dude has the step back and he's 19 years old. You know what I mean? Like, who has a step back 3 at 19? Yeah. It's incredible. And like, that shot has been, that's the gold. That's gold in the modern game. You cannot take that shot away. We saw that against Houston down the stretch. You know, we got Capella on a switch, gave him this wicked step back move, hit the game winner there. It's just like, it's just such an incredible weapon on top of everything else he already has. It's just crazy. Like, watching him last night, like, he had 32 and you're just like, this didn't even seem hard. Like, he's not even good yet. You know what I mean? And he's still really good. Like, can you guess how many times he's finished a play on cuts this year?
No, I can't. That's a good question.
He has 13 total finished possessions on cuts.
I was going to say, like, honestly, 5, because the fact that you brought it up like made me think the number was super low, and like, I've watched enough Mavs games to know that they're not really utilizing him that way. So like, I thought it'd be like a crazy low number. 13 is pretty crazy low though. That's
the thing, is like, a lot of what he's doing is hard. Like, these step back dribble shots, these pull up shots, he's doing a lot on the ball, and he can be optimized so much more off the ball. Like last night, even like, he had a couple give and goes. I think one with DeAndre Jordan. I think it was DeAndre. I can't remember. But like, he can move off the ball, and you can get points out of him that way. The fact that he's doing this, I'm not a huge fan of like looking at usage and then looking at true shooting percentages, like the all-encompassing rookie stat. But like, the fact that he's been pretty efficient for a primary ball handler, even though the shooting's dropped off a little bit lately, and what he's doing is mostly hard, I think that's really promising.
Yeah, like, Marvin Bagley has been really, really good in his role, but Marvin's role is easy. Right? Like, he's just running the floor, getting offensive rebounds, wreaking havoc, and being an athlete, right? Like, that stuff is what we knew Marvin could do. What Luka is doing is stuff that we knew Luka could do, but it's just incredibly fucking hard. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, that this guy is a primary scorer on a team that, like, he is the guy on a team that is a potential playoff team in a Western Conference that is a joke in terms of how hard it is. Says a lot about where we're at with Luka.
And the fact that he's already the guy on his team, and that was the case, like, 5 games in, you're like, holy shit, this is his team. Yeah. Like, how often does that happen on like a relatively competitive team? Like, I don't think the Mavericks are that good. Like, they're fine, but the fact that he's already the guy at 19 is just pretty crazy. Like, again, kind of run out of superlatives about him. He's doing exactly what I expected him to do, and I was like crazy, unrealistically high on him. Like, I said he was going to be the best player in the league in 5 years before the draft. Like, so I'm probably about the highest you can possibly get on him, and he's kind of lived up to that, which is just insane.
Yeah, like, I kind of got laughed at for saying that he would be 15-5-5 as a rookie. I wasn't quite sure how efficient it would be, and to be honest, I probably didn't think it would be as efficient as it's been. But like, 15-5-5 as a rookie is a like ridiculously high standard, I feel like, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he is right now at 19-7-5. Like, he's been unbelievable, and it's been efficient. It's been awesome. He's everything that we could have asked for offensively and more. Do you have any thoughts on his defense? I feel like, again, it's like easier to hide him just because he's big, but that he's just not been very good defensively.
Yeah, I mean, he's not good. I mean, sometimes he doesn't even contest shots, and I'm like, you with those kinds of guys, you just have to win on the margins. You have to win by contest, being in the right spot. He's really smart, though. He has made some really high-level team defense plays, and that's what you have to hope for with him, because he's not that quick guarding the ball. You hope for a little bit of athletic improvement, but the guy's not he's not a huge negative defensively, because he's 6'8", he's smart. Like, you do see him even contain guys on drives. Like, you know, everybody points to the LeBron block, but later in that game, like, he had a recovery contest on LeBron where you contained him and then challenged him at the basket in space. So it is there. again, like we talked about pre-draft, a lot of this is also tied to athletic improvement. And I do think there is, I don't know if it's sizable as far as what his potential is athletically, but I do think he's going to get more athletic, and that's only going to help him.
Okay, so let's talk about Jaren Jackson. I'll be honest with you. I think that the hype has gone like a little too far with Jaren. Not a lot too far, just a little bit too far. Like I've seen people say that they would take him over Luka, and I think that that's like insane. That's totally crazy to me. I would still not take him over DeAndre based off of what we've seen so far.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, like I said, your position on DeAndre is valid and it's well established. So I don't think DeAndre's done anything to negate that thus far.
Right. And by the way, like I don't think Jaren's done anything like out of the question of what we've seen so far either, right? Like he's very, very good. He can step away and shoot threes at a reasonable clip already. And he's a really good shot blocker. Like these are things that we knew.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. And this is like the first negative thing I've ever said about Jaren, but I do think he's getting maybe overhyped to an extent. Like you see like generational defender, like one of the best defenders of all time. I'm not that high on his defense. I do think that at times he looks a little bit slower with his hip turn. Like he doesn't have like the most powerful hips, so you don't see him move with an incredible speed that you see some of these all-time defenders do. Like I don't think he's KG. That's not really a knock though. Like you know what I mean? Like I still think the guy's an all NBA defender. I said before the draft he was going to be the defensive player of the year at some point. Still believe that.
Yeah,
he's lived up to the hype, and he's honestly exceeded it for me a little bit offensively, just because. I was pretty high on his ability, his coordination to like attack the basket and his dribbling ability, and that has really popped. I mean, he can go 94 feet with the ball, make dribble moves. Like he gave someone an in and out dribble on the baseline. I think it might have been Willie Cauley-Stein in that game on the baseline, and then had this reverse layup. He's just super fluid, man. Like I don't think he's not Anthony Davis offensively. People got to get off that too. But he can do stuff. He can do shit with the ball. Like he's effective there.
And the other thing that he has done better than what I thought he would offensively is finish through contact. That was something that he struggled with last year at Michigan State, and he has been much better at finishing through contact this year than what I thought he would be. Finishing around the basket as well, just like general little small stuff. Like he's just been much better at. His core strength looks a lot better, I guess is the best way to put it.
And his touch looks great. Like that left hand and the length extension he gets, like you can't really block his shot. And he's not very fast. He's pretty fast for his size, of course, but like relative to some elite level offensive bigs, like he doesn't get a ton of push off the floor. He's not very explosive, but when he extends with his left, you just can't block that shot. And he's got great touch on that. So that's another thing that really hit home with his process so far. I think that's probably the biggest surprise for me is like his ability to finish with touch at high speeds is pretty impressive.
So the two things that we were worried about pre-draft have cropped up though. You weren't as worried about the fouling issue, right?
I wasn't long term, no, but that definitely has cropped up.
Yeah, that has continued to be an issue for him in Memphis. It's gone, like you can look back through history and find examples of this being something that like continues to be a problem. Like I would say Karl Towns still struggles with fouls a little bit too often. And Karl Towns, by the way, was a guy that was not quite the prospect Jaren Jackson was in space defensively, but was a player who most people expected to be a plus defender in college based off of like block rates and the ability to contest inside. And that hasn't necessarily translated. Jaren is already a better defender than what Karl Towns is because he's able to guard in space. He is just a little bit better at rotating from the weak side. He's a lot better at rotating over from the weak side and actually contesting. I don't know why I said a little bit. He's a lot better at that. But he does have that same, like, use the body, bring the arms down, foul kind of technique that Towns does. And then second, he's only averaging 4.9 defensive rebounds per 36 minutes. I get that he plays with Marc Gasol, but, like, Marc Gasol is not this wild defensive rebounder either. Like, he is big, and there is a bit of siphoning there, I think, in terms of the pure numbers, but I am still not impressed with Jaren Jackson's defensive rebounding.
I think that's the weakness right there, and that was the weakness for me before the draft. Is like he's not the most explosive leaper, and I think that really hinders him on the glass. Like he's got more of an athletic build than like a really girth build that he can really hold position at a high level. So those two things in conjunction, I think, limit his potential on that end. That's going to be something I think you have to build around. Like he's eventually going to play minutes at the 5. You need to scheme that and get who can really crash down in defensive rebound. I tend to underrate. I guess devalue rebounding in the draft. Like I don't really consider it like a high value skill. Yeah. So that's something I didn't really overlook, but I just didn't really care that much that he wasn't a great rebounder, but it's definitely an issue for him. And I think that as for the technique, he was terrible technique-wise, especially in the beginning of the season. Like, I was watching him play, I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, what are you doing? Like, he was just leaning into guys, reaching. I think that's going to be correctable over time. He's just too smart, and we have to remind people, like, this is the youngest player in the league. Like, like the fact that he's already got these instincts, and you can expect a little bit of growing pains when a guy, I don't think he's raw, but, like, there are some parts of his game mentally that are still coming into play, and he's super, super young.
Yeah, I think, by the way, like, I'm still in. Jaren Jackson is going to be an all-star level player. Like, he's going to be amazing. He's going to be awesome. I'm super excited to watch him grow in Memphis. But, like, the offensive creation has been there. I'm super excited about that. The ability to finish through contact has been great. The shooting has been, honestly, like, a little bit worse than what I think. I think his level as a shooter is higher than 34% from three. I would assume you agree with that, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing that has improved, I think, as the season's progressed. Like, he started off really, really poor from three, and I think he's gotten a little better there.
Yeah, so I'm in on all that. Just, like, it's really hard to be a center and be, like, an all-NBA center if you have just, like, even the smallest concern points, right? The fact that he's not, like, a wild athlete like KG, like Anthony Davis, like guys like that is just, like, somewhat concerning in terms of his overall upside. The fact that he is not a great defensive rebounder is a little bit concerning, and the fact that the fouling keeps cropping up is a little bit concerning. But, like, it's the difference between, you know, franchise, all superstar player and all-star. And, like, if he's an all-star, this is a win for Memphis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think he has, like, the scoring upside to be, like, a truly, like, franchise center. Like, he can get you baskets, but that's mostly, like, pick and pops, attacking guys off the dribble. Like, if you throw him, he's been much better in the post, I think. But those are a lot of on duck-ins. Like, he really does a good job running the floor in transition and getting these deep seals. But I never see him. I don't think he's a good enough decision maker to run your offense through. Like, he's not Jokic, of course. Like, he's not that kind of player. So I think that caps his upside a little bit on that end, too. It's like, I don't ever see him becoming, like, this guy, like a fulcrum of an offense.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's totally fair. Negative assist to turnover ratio. DeAndre Ayton, I believe, has a positive assist to turnover ratio, which again is a little bit surprising to me. But yeah, like, I think that that's going to be a fun debate over the course of the next few years, I think, is DeAndre versus Jaren Jackson.
Agreed. And it's one that probably doesn't get enough play. I mean, a lot of like, draft Twitter's very, very pro Jaren. A lot of other sources are still like very pro Ayton, which is fine. We're not going to know the answers to this right now. Like, I would, of course, still take Jaren because I was on Jaren pre-draft as higher than Ayton, so there's no reason to change that stance. But we don't have enough information yet. Like, if you were higher on Ayton, I don't see really moving off that quite yet until we get more information.
Yeah, like, I've seen people say, like, they would take Wendell Carter over Ayton, and I'm sitting here going crazy. Like,
I would do that too, by the way.
Yeah, you were on this pre-draft.
I was.
Were you? Would you have taken Wendell over Ayton?
Yep. And that's, again, a very pro Wendell, who honestly, it's kind of funny that at the beginning of the season, people were trashing the Suns, like, Ayton has a terrible situation. You know what has the worst situation for any rookie?
Oh, 100% Wendell Carter.
It's fucking Wendell Carter, dude. Like, I can't watch that team. I know you had Ricky on, who was fantastic. He went on this huge filibuster. I am so frustrated with that team.
Well, like, especially since Boylan took over, because if you watch Wendell Carter, like, early in the season, he was pretty comfortable, like, being able to step out and shoot a little bit. He's not even looking at the basket right now, and I have to imagine that that's Jim Boylan telling him you're not shooting anymore.
Like, if you draft Wendell Carter and you don't have him shoot threes, what are you doing? Like, that is his offensive value. He's not like an interior post scorer. Like, there was a point in the season where he was in, like, the first percentile for post scoring. Like, he's not that explosive in there. He's not Ayton. You know what I mean? Like, you have to use him in space. Like, you have to use him like the Celtics use Horford for a lazy comparison. Like, that's the kind of player he is. If you're not going to allow him to shoot early in his career, like attack closeouts, really utilize his passing on dribble handoffs, and if he's not going to be put in a position to succeed and, like, encouraged to do these things, like, what are you doing? Yeah.
Jim Boylan, guys, I think that this might be a hot take, but Jim Boylan might not be good at his job. I know this is crazy, right? By the way, DeAndre Ayton, 8 points higher true shooting percentage, higher assist rate for DeAndre Ayton, which is the craziest thing in the world to me. Wendell can really pass the ball. I think that with Lowry Markkanen back, that assist number is going to go up too. If you watch even like the couple of games that Markkanen hit, you said that you don't like to watch them. Have you watched them since Markkanen has come back?
Oh, I have, yes.
Yeah, like those two actually have already developed a little bit of symbiosis together, big to big passing, which is really nice. Yeah, like Wendell's going to be good. I thought Wendell was a very good quality starting center in the draft, and I continue to think that.
I mean, I think Wendell's great. Like, I think it's, again, his situation is depreciating his value some. Also, he's not as efficient clearly as Ayton. He doesn't have that kind of touch. He doesn't have that kind of dominant size. His defense has been absolutely spectacular for a rookie. Like, his rim protection.
That's true.
Like, the last time I checked his rim protection numbers, he was like 48% at the rim. Mm-hmm. Like, that is insane for a rookie. I mean, the next highest was like Jaren Jackson at 59, or Bagley was like high 50s or something like that. Like, that's insane. Like, his rotations have been great. He's got more switchability than I thought, and I was a little bit higher on his movement skills than most. I'm not saying he's like.
I'm still not quite as high on that as you are.
Yeah, I am. I'm getting to that point. Like, he can hang close enough to use his length, and that's something that his length is really powerful. Like, if you don't have length as a big, it's really hard to be a space defender because you're probably not going to be able to stay close enough to these guys to contest. He has that ability. I'm just super high in his IQ, but yeah, he has to get more efficient, and I think he will if he's allowed to shoot threes, and that is the way he's utilized on offense when he has some gravity over time. I love his mechanics. I think he's going to get there. He just has to be empowered to do that.
Yeah, +6 wingspan on Carter at 6 foot.
Yep.
6'10" and a half, I would say. Like something in that range with shoes. So, yeah, I mean, like, Wendell's really good. Like, I'm not sitting here like going crazy, like trashing the dude. Let's get to the point guards because you were very, very in on Trae Young pre-draft. If I remember correctly, you were not like wild high on Shai, were you?
I was not wild high. I was more like, this is kind of the role I imagined for Shai. We can get into him more, but this is kind of more what I saw. I didn't quite see the upside with him.
Yeah. Let's start with Trae. Well, here, let's start with this question. Which one would you take long-term right now?
Trae.
Okay. I was Trae pre-draft. I had them super close, though. think I had like Trae 8 and him 9 or something like that. I think I would flip that now. But it's still very close. Like, the only thing that Trae is, I shouldn't say the only thing. The passing with Trae has really, really translated. He is an incredible open floor passer. You and I both thought that was his best skill coming into the draft, correct?
Yes, I think I phrased it. Passing is his best skill, but shooting is his most important.
Yes, and he is shooting a robust 25% from three.
It's not good. And I've watched basically every Trae game this season. Like, I'm encouraged by a lot of what I see. I think he's already a top 10 passer in the league. Like, that guy has incredible anticipation in pick and roll. Like, it's all the craft, all the little, like, he just knows where to get to his spots. He's really underrated as far as his physicality. You don't see it because he's 6'2", but that guy, like, he seeks contact. He's incredible at drawing bullshit fouls, which I love. Like, he's really good at, like, rearing his head back and stuff like that. And the passing has been incredible. The handle's great. He gets to the rim more than I think a lot of people gave him credit for, just because people guard him like he is a high-level shooter. And that's really important.
Yeah, it is. That's a really great point.
He's not a high-level shooter right now. Like you said, he's a very low-level shooter. He's probably the most devastating, least impactful shooter in the league with how many he takes. But people aren't guarding him that way. They're sticking with him off the ball. They press up on him on the ball, and he beats those guys. He did in college. He has underrated horizontal burst. We see the touch at the rim. Like, he's not like crazy finishing number. He's like 45th percentile right now around the basket in the half court. But you see the touch he has on these runners, which are excellent. I think there's a lot to work with here. It's all predicated on the shot. Like, if he's going to be the worst pull-up shooter in the league, like, he's not going to be the kind of player that I thought he could be. But I think we're still a little early in the process to, like, write off his shooting. Like, if he gets, I mean, it is troubling though when you put it in concert with the way he finished his season last year with the shooting in the shooting department. Like, if he doesn't get to that level where he's like a 37% shooter and people really guard him, like, if people stop guarding him and he doesn't make shots, that's really devastating.
Yeah. So far, so if you take out November, December, January, and go with February and March of last year, and then you add in what he's done so far this season, so basically, the last 11 months of Trae Young's shooting, he is shooting 69 for 272, which is a robust 25.4% from three.
Just kill me now.
And that is a pretty big sample at this stage. Having said that, he was a 40% three-point shooter over his previous. How many threes did he take last year? I'm like doing math like on the fly right now. Apologies, but for the previous 220 threes that he took, he was like at 41%. So 25% over 272 shot sample, 41% over a 220 shot sample. I'm guessing he's a pretty streaky shooter, guys. That might be accurate. He is just it's so hard to tell what he's going to be as a shooter. I really don't know how to even gauge this yet.
Yep, and if he doesn't shoot, it's a huge problem because he's a defensive liability, and if he's not an otherworldly offensive player at his size, then it's going to be an issue long term as far as his ceiling. I'm still going to stick with him because I see so much that's potentially elite in his game offensively. It's just the shooting, man. It's got to come around. I think there's that's one of the two clear knocks on Trae. The other that kind of ties into that is how is his body going to hold up over the course of a season? Like, can he play night in and night out? I haven't seen a lot of issues there as far as like him wearing down. Like some of the effort stuff he does on defense, he just can't get away with shit like that. But I don't really see it as like his body's wearing down. Like he's still getting to the rim. He's still getting by guys. We'll see what he's doing in March or something like that. But right now, I think those are the two clear knocks. Like of course, with defense too, but we all knew about the defense. But if he doesn't shoot, if this is who he is, I think that's too extreme. I don't think he's a 25% three-point shooter, but I think your point about streakiness is very on point. If he's a streak shooter, that is an issue too. If he's not like a knockdown kind of high-gravity 36, 37% shooter, really does a lot to his upside.
Yeah, it was always this is the way it's been in high school. Like I tried to tell people this, and they kind of came back at me saying that it wasn't true. Like there was a reporter in Oklahoma who was like, yeah, I watched him play in high school and he he was just an incredible scorer. And I was like, no, he's like basically every level. He's been a pretty streaky shooter. Like if you look at the numbers, it's basically played out. Like it's not a bad thing, just who he is. It's kind of a bad thing, I guess, but like it's just who he is at this stage. And he needs to, you mentioned the body and how it holds up over the course of over the course of a full season. I'm going to be interested just from a development perspective to see how his body develops because, as I've talked about a lot of times on this podcast, I think that just core strength and strength in general is such an underrated part of shooting that like how his body develops, I think is going to play a critical role in how he develops as a shooter.
I think that's 100% spot on. And I do think that a lot of his shooting is via his mechanics, like how he gets energy transference. That's why he can shoot from so deep. People are like, oh, he's not very strong. How can he shoot from that deep? It's through his mechanics, especially his lower body. Right. But I do think that strength input, like you noted, is probably an underrated component here. That's why I'm very curious to see what he looks like next season when he has an off season to really get in the weight room because they're obviously not making the playoffs. If you have 5 months off to really, enhance your body, enhance your core strength, does that impact his shooting?
Yeah, I think that it might. Let's find out. Shai Alexander, I think, is the last one we're going to talk about, and then I'll just kind of open the floor to you on guys that have impressed. Shai has been very fun, I would say. Again, I think that the hype is going like slightly around the bend. Like people think he's going to be like a super. Like I get the impression that like some people think he's like going to be a potential like superstar point guard. Do you get that?
I do get that impression.
Yeah, and I'm not quite there yet. Like I think he's going to be really, really good, and I think that like if you made me bet on him making an All-Star game, I would say yes. But where do you fall on this?
I think he's a very good basketball player. He was the guy in the draft that I knew I was going to be too low on. I said that pre-draft. I was like, this is the guy. If I'm going to miss on anybody, it's him because he's super fucking smart. He has high-level instincts, and he has, the physical traits. He meets the thresholds for skill, all of that stuff. It just comes down to the pull-up jumper, frankly. But I think when you analyze Shai, you have to take into account role. It's not like he's playing the point guard position for the Clippers, who play a motion-type scheme where they have their wings via Gallinari and Tobias Harris initiate their offense a lot of the time. Like, Shai's in the corner a lot. Like, he's spotting up from the corner. He's taking high-value shots off the we haven't really gotten a chance to see like any kind of dynamic off the dribble game. Like it says, of course, like he's shooting very well on those, but if you watch him play, like a lot of those are deep catches where he gets into the paint and he just shoots over the top of guys, which is really valuable. I think that's the most surprising thing for me is like he's physical. Like he'll give you a shoulder drop for smaller guards, he'll just shoot right over the top. But those aren't really like high value shots as far as like he doesn't have anything really above the break off the dribble right now from three. I value that shot more for point guards, probably more than I should. But if you're just breaking down Shai's game, he's just really fucking good at basketball, man. Yeah,
he really is. That's just a accurate statement. Like they have him fill up from the corner up toward the wing pretty regularly within the just general scheme of their offense, and getting him the ball on the move and allowing him to run like pick and roll after he gets the ball on the move like that, I think is huge for him because he's not a guy like he has good burst, but it's not like elite burst, And I think that being able to scheme him and be smart about the way you get him the ball and the situations you get him the ball in is critical to his development long term. One thing that's worth noting here is like he's been very unlucky in transition, I think, this year. He's only in the 14th percentile in terms of points per possession. He actually is generating like a reasonable amount of them. So I think that's going to just straight up revert at some point. You look at the catch and shoot numbers, 75th percentile, like you said. Look at the jumper off the dribble. He's taken 114 jumpers off the dribble, so he's taking like 3 a game, and is in the 73rd percentile, almost at a point per possession on those shots, which is, again, I think a pretty big surprise. But if you look at how he's getting those shots, the difference between his field goal percentage and effective field goal percentage is under 1%. So he's shooting 47.4% on field goal percent overall, 48.2 on effective field goal percentage. So all of them are coming in the mid-range. Like, he's made 1 3 off the dribble above the or 1 off the dribble 3 this season, if I remember correctly. So it just kind of is what it is. You know, it's fine. Like, he might figure it out, he might not, but that was the question coming in, and I don't know that he's answered it.
Yeah, and I think that actual make was a heave from like near half court. So I actually went over those possessions because I was like, I want to see it. I just want to see him. If we talk about all these rookies and who's in the best situation, I think that Shai has a legitimate argument here for how they're utilizing him. Doc has been really, really good this year, and he's being put in positions to succeed. And I'm not trying to slight Shai for that at all. He's been incredible in his role, especially for a rookie. But I want to see, I don't think he could do what Trae Young's doing right now. And I'm not just talking about usage. I'm talking about style of play and like how you're guarded, it being the fulcrum of an offense. Like Shai is not that right now. And I think that he's getting treated like that from a lot of people, especially on Twitter. Like, oh my God, he looks like this next generational kind of point guard. It's like, he's not really even playing that role right now. He's more of a secondary ball handler. Like it's similar to De'Aaron Fox. Like, they're not similar players, but it all comes down to that pull-up. Like, Fox has hit that pull-up this year from 3, and it's really just completely changed his game. I mean, there's, of course, other improvements Fox has made. He looks like a monster. But if Shai gets that and he gets a little bit stronger, then he's going to be really good. He's going to be an all-star caliber point guard. But I think that he's being given that right now when that hasn't been what he's shown on tape.
Anyone else that you want to point out from this rookie class?
I just want to get your thoughts on 2 guys. You're a little higher on Colin Sexton, I think, than a lot of people I know. What is your take on his game so far?
It's been, I would say, the positive of what I thought he could be. The fact that he is shooting 40% from 3, I think, is like a little bit unsustainable, to be honest. But if you look at the numbers since Ty Lue left, they're actually like really, really good. There's just a lot to be excited about there. I'm pulling them up right now. Since Ty Lue departed, he is at 15.8 points per game on 44% from the field, 43% from 3, 85% from the line. The one problem that I have and continue to have with this is that a lot of his shit comes from the mid-range. And like, I think that he's taking more off the dribble jumpers in the mid-range than any other player in the entire NBA right now. That scares me a lot going forward. But the fact that like he's been, I don't know if I want to say efficient, but like that he's even gotten by at a reasonable clip doing that. Like the fact that, I don't know, like he hasn't been efficient. Like he's been at like 50% true shooting percentage since Ty Lue left. But like, it hasn't been a disaster, I guess, him doing that. And that at least gives me like a little bit of excitement going forward, a little bit. I don't know that like he's going to be a guy that you win a ton of games with. He still really can't pass, but he can get separation. If he starts figuring out a way to get separation going toward the basket, and utilizing his speed to get out on the break a little bit more than what they do now, I think that he can be like a good starting point guard. Yeah,
honestly, I think that's fair. It's weird because he looks exactly like what I expected, but he's been more effective, like you said, on those pull-up mid-range shots. When you watch him play, it's kind of like the Dennis Smith effect to me a little bit. There's just no fluidity in like how he moves on the floor as far as like how he sees the floor. You know what I mean? Like it's very like tunnel, not necessarily tunnel vision, but kind of he plays in a tunnel. Like
it disrupts the offense. It seems like whenever he has the ball,
it's crazy because he's very purposeful in how he gets his shots. But like if you ask him to play outside that sphere, like he's had a lot of advantage situations. Like he'll get an offensive rebound and just immediately go towards the rim. Like those instincts are there. Like he finishes there. But like when you put him in a holistic environment with 9 other players, it just never seems like there's any kind of fluidity to his game. And that's kind of my issue with him as a prospect. And I don't think he's the level of athlete that Dennis Smith is. So it's like that kind of player, it's going to be very, very interesting because we have a couple test cases now to see how they develop as passers, because I very much agree with you. He's if you watch him compared to like Trae and Shai, not really fair to compare those guys necessarily in the passing department, but it's like they're light years ahead as far as making reads on the floor.
Yeah, and the other problem is that he's been like kind of a disaster finishing around the basket on drives too.
Yeah.
Concerning. I will just fully admit, like the numbers are fine, but the like eye test is a little bit concerning.
I agree with you. Again, I was pretty low. I was more like outlier low. I had him at like 20 in the draft, so I was more suspect just because I don't like to gamble on initiators anymore who don't meet a certain confidence level if they're that size. But other guy I want to get your thoughts on, Mo Bamba has been kind of interesting. People like forgot about this guy. I know he's playing in Orlando, and he's someone who like you don't really have to watch for like the next 2 years. Almost, I feel that way. Like it's more of a ceiling play. But what are your thoughts on him so far?
Well, the weird thing is that he's been overshadowed by Vucevic. So like,
yes,
I feel like we haven't really gotten a chance to see him in a ton of like interesting scenarios and in a lot of like interesting lineups even. You know what I mean? Like he's playing a ton like next to Aaron Gordon at the 4, which is good, but then they'll surround him with Jaren Grant, who is not a shooter, Jonathan Simmons, who's not a shooter. Gordon isn't a guy that you're going to trust. So like it's lineups that I don't want to say they don't make sense, but they just aren't super functional. So like I'm not entirely sure what to make of all of him yet. Like the flashes that he shows at times, the fact that like he's already hitting threes at like an okay clip, 33% for a rookie is fine, especially for one who's 7 feet tall and blocks as many shots as he does. The rim protection has been okay, I would say. Probably not as like outlier good as what I think people were hoping for. Rebounding's probably been a little bit better than what I thought it would be, honestly. Maybe we did like underrate the fact that he was a guy who just kind of ate up rebounds in college just due to his length, and he's continuing to do that in the NBA. It's just he's in one of the most difficult situations to judge, I think, because they're in that weird mode where they're like not competing, but they are competing. And every time that he steps on the floor, because Vucevic steps off the floor, and so much of their offense, God love them, is tied to Nikola Vucevic, that like the offense just completely falls off a cliff every time that Vucevic is off the floor. So like they don't really have like a general semblance of what they're doing on that end. So I don't know how to evaluate him on that end.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of his issues, again, are strength-related, and you're going to see how that progresses over the next couple of years. I think from a draft ranking standpoint, if you were lower on Bamba, that was probably the best approach, just because nobody's going to give a shit in 3 or 4 years if he turns out to be really great. You know what I mean? He's like that kind of player where I don't think he's going to be super effective the next 2 years or 3 years. It's all about physical development and his upside. So, yeah, I've been kind of, I don't know if I want to say impressed with him. He's kind of as is. It's just going to come down to in like 2 or 3 years. Like, okay, question for you real quick. If you were re-ranking the draft, would he be in the same tier as Jaren Jackson?
No,
okay.
I do not think he would be. No, I don't think he would be. And I had Bamba at like 5 or 6, if I remember correctly, something in that range. I had him over Wendell Carter, and I don't know that I would have him over Wendell Carter anymore.
Awesome. That was going to be my next question. So I'm just kind of gauging that. And the Mavericks came out and said that they would have taken Wendell Carter over Bamba at 5. I think they said something to that effect if they had made that Luka trade. It's kind of curious to gauge all like how these teams value these bigs and stuff like. But I don't think there's any. I'm not concerned about Mo Bamba necessarily. Like I had my druthers about him, or I had my reservations about him pre-draft, and they've kind of just played out as you would expect, right?
Yeah, no, I think that if you were worried about him pre-draft, you're worried about him now. If you thought he had the upside pre-draft, you probably still believe that because he hasn't just been in a competent environment yet. And by like competent, like it's not like Orlando has been bad this year. It's just they haven't played him in lineups that make a crazy amount of sense yet for what his skill set is. And that's not their fault. It's just a reality of what their roster construction is.
100%, yeah. If you want to go through just a couple more guys really quick fashion, I think we are both high on Miles Bridges. I think he's kind of getting forgotten about in Charlotte coming off the bench.
He's been awesome,
I think he's going to be a really effective player.
He's been awesome.
Yes. Like you see him on highlights because he has these ridiculous dunks, and then I just think he's going to be such a good fit in the modern NBA, and he's kind of someone who's getting slept on a little bit too much, I think.
Yes, he's been everything that we hope for. I had him at 8 pre-draft. You probably had him same area, right?
At 8.
Did you? Yeah. So, like, Yeah, I think he was an awesome get for them. I think that I named him like one of my like favorite picks of the draft after the draft. That just continues.
And
to
another
be
one of those, exactly right. Yeah, and another one of those guys for me is Kevin Huerter. I've been really impressed with him. I knew that's where you were going next. I knew it. I love that guy, man. Like he's good. Like I think he's better than Taurean Prince right now. Like he's that good. I would not say that, but I understand his passing why you do. I just think he's such a smarter player. Like they need Taurean Prince's like creation. It's funny that we talked about this on the prospects pod. People consider Taurean Prince like a 3-and-D guy. He's more of like a shot maker, like off the dribble. Like that's what his game is for the Hawks. Like it's just kind of curious that played out that way. But Herter's passing is really translated, especially in secondary fashion. We hit on this. Like he can come off like a dribble handoff or like a curl and hit that over the top pass. He has skip pass ability. We're starting to see the shooting improve over time. He has that off movement shooting ability. His defense is at his size. I think it hasn't been good, but I don't think it's been a disaster. Like I think there's some promising aspects to his defensive game. Doesn't have the ideal length, of course, but I think he's a home run pick for the Hawks. Like I don't see him as like an all-star caliber player, but I think he's going to be a quality starter.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Yeah, I think that he was a good pick for the Hawks. Like I don't really have anything else other than that. Like I think he was just a good pick. Like Aaron Holiday, I really like Aaron Holiday so far.
Okay,
he's been really good for Indiana. He just comes in and he steadies the ship a little bit, and he's like also just not even shooting well so far, and he's still making an impact by defending, still making an impact by distributing the ball well and getting them in and out of their sets whenever he has to. He's been solid in the limited minutes that he's played.
Yeah, he's honestly one of the few rookies where I haven't really seen any of him. When I've watched Indiana, he hasn't played. So I'm going to get to his tape definitely more in depth. Some of these guys are really like Time Lord starting to get minutes for the Celtics. He's been pretty good, honestly, defensive. Like his length really matters. He's a total asshole with his length. Like you saw that against the Suns. Like he had like 4 or 5 blocks. Like he really just changes plays. Landry Shamet is another guy. His shooting has been phenomenal this year. I mean, he's like, what's it, 45% or something on high volume. So we knew he could do that. I had him as a late first guy.
Can we talk about people like going crazy about Mitchell Robinson?
Oh, sure. Yeah, take the floor, because I know you're a little bit more suspect than Robinson.
Mitchell Robinson is, like, you would think that, like, yeah, he's playing, like, limited minutes and everything. He's played under 500 minutes so far. But, like, you would think that, like, even his per-minute numbers are just bananas, given, like, what people talk about with him. He's averaging 9.8 points and 8.2 rebounds per 36 minutes. Like, he's fine. He looks like a good rotation center, and he was a great pick for them early in the second round. But, like, I don't even think, like, I think he's their backup center of the future. I don't think he is, like, a starting quality center long term.
I'm a little higher. I do think he has starter upside. I'm just not sure. He's another one of those guys who just fouls, like, a ridiculous amount. It's hard to evaluate him right now just because technically it's so far away. And that's, of course, a lot of the concern with him is, like, just does he get it on the floor? But his ability to challenge shots on the perimeter, we saw this in Summer League. It's real. Like, I don't know if I buy his lateral quickness as far as, like, switching and stuff like that, but his ability to cover ground is, like, one of the most impressive skills I've seen from a big size in a while. Like, he can really close out all the way across the floor and block shots. So I think there's definitely something there. His role is very clear as far as a pick and dive guy. He's a great lob catch finisher. I think there's an easy avenue for him to have starter value. I just haven't seen enough of his tape yet to really buy the instincts and the intelligence.
Among players who have played at least 300 minutes this year, he is the league leader in fouls per minute.
I knew you were going there. It's crazy when you watch him. Like, he fouls so much.
He's just very clumsy out on the floor. Like,
yes.
It's like all limbs and explosiveness, and he doesn't know where it's all going.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Anybody else from the second round? Like, I haven't seen Kurucs yet for the Nets, and he's been getting some sterling reports from a lot of people. Have you seen any of him?
Not enough to, like, really, really talk about him in depth. Yeah, like, I know that people are excited about him. Shout out MGrads. MGrads is jumping in on the Rodion Kurucs bandwagon for his white European pick. I don't really have I don't have strong enough takes on him to give them, and I don't want to, like, you know, make it so that, like, sure, Nets fans come and yell at me, because I don't want that in my life.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring him up without actually saying anything bad, because I haven't seen him play at all, but he's someone who has impressed. Just really quick, last point for me on the rookies. I was going to mention Marvin Bagley. You talked a little bit about him, but he's been very productive and efficient. I think that he gets killed a little bit too much. Like that was a pre-draft thing. I think he's a really good player who can make an all-star team potentially multiple times. Like he's very good at what he does. I think it's a learning point too. Like his instincts aren't good defensively in my opinion, although they've been better than I expected from Duke. Like he's made progression there, but that dude just plays really hard.
Yeah.
Like if you're a super athlete and you play really hard, like you're not a total minus on that end. Like I have questions still about does he contribute to winning at the highest levels. All that stuff is still there, but I think he's been effective, and Kings fans and the Kings get killed for passing on Luka. Like I think they're probably unfairly criticized to the extent it's gotten, especially recently.
Well, I don't think they're unfairly criticized. Like I don't think the Kings got unfairly criticized for passing on Luka. It was an absurd decision at the time, and it has borne out that way, but it's not Marvin's fault that it's borne out that way. Like he's played as well as you could possibly expect him to play. He's been really, really good, I think, when he's been on the floor. It's just that, like, Luka is better in every way. Like, I don't know. I love Marvin Bagley. I don't want to talk shit about Marvin Bagley. Like, I think Marvin, like, you look at what John Collins' progression was, another guy who's, like, I think Paul Flannery, he wrote about John Collins earlier this week, and he put it best. Like, John Collins doesn't have, like, a great skill, right? Like he doesn't have that like one standout like go-to move. His move is just being active and being athletic. And I think that when we look up next season, Marvin Bagley is going to be doing what John Collins is doing now, averaging like 19 and 10 a game.
Would not shock me at all. And by my comment, for like being unfairly criticized, I meant mostly relative to the Suns and the Hawks. Like people don't get on the Hawks, right. I don't think enough for that trade. The Suns don't get really any criticism because it was kind of universally accepted at the time, that pick. But if you're going to be on the Luka's transcendent kind of talent and you don't share the same opinion that you do as far as Ayton being a transcendent, I think the other teams probably can be criticized if that is your philosophy. And I do think the Kings are the primary kind of target there when it should be spread around a little bit more evenly.
Yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable opinion. We've got one more advertisement here. It's going to be a great, terrific product called Simple Contacts. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of Simple Contacts. It's the most convenient way to renew your contact lens prescription and reorder your brand of contacts from anywhere in minutes. Instead of heading to the doctor year after year to just renew your prescription for something you wear every day, you can do it on your own time and terms in just a few minutes. This is vision care for the 21st century. Why would you use it? It's because it's convenient, fast, reliable, it offers choice, and it's going to save you money. That vision test is only $20. The contacts lens prices are unbeatable. Standard shipping is free. And best of all, we're offering a promotion to our listeners. You go to simplecontacts.com. You use that promo code GameTheory20. You're going to get $20 off of your contacts at Simple Contacts. You go to simplecontacts.com/GameTheory20, and you're going to get $20 off of your contacts at simplecontacts.com. They're reliable. It's designed by ophthalmologists, and licensed doctors review every test so you can skip the office visit but not the care. It takes under 5 minutes for the vision test. It's self-guided. It's simple. I'm just a huge, huge fan of Simple Contacts and how convenient it makes my life. Go to simplecontacts.com/GameTheory20 or just go to simplecontacts.com and use that code GameTheory20 at checkout. Remember, this is not a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. They only test that your prescription still helps you see 20/20, and they renew your prescription. They don't write completely new scripts. But go to simplecontacts.com and use that promo code GameTheory20. The last thing we're going to talk about here is the college kids. This is a long podcast, by the way. We're not going to do podcasts this long. Even though you're back, like, we're not going to do this regularly. But we have to catch up on some things, man.
I'm sensing a trend.
Let's talk about the draft. Zion Williamson is number one. We don't really need to go crazy here, right? Like that's accurate for you.
No, he's one in his own tier. Like he's the guy. He's the guy.
I think that's right. Beyond Zion, what is your general thought in this draft? Because I'm disappointed. Like I am not super enthused.
I'm definitely disappointed, but I'm not to the extent where I think the draft is bad. I just think there's a lot of question marks in the draft. Like we don't see what made last draft so special is like the top level players had instincts, intelligence, they had the skill level. This draft I think is missing a lot of the instincts. Like I love Nas Little. pre-North Carolina. I think you can get into role utilization, all that stuff. But I love the competitive fire.
Let's go kill Roy Williams. Can we do that? Can we kill Roy Williams for this?
Take it away.
No, I'm kind of joking with that because I think that one of the most underrated players in college basketball this season, I texted you about him earlier, was Cam Johnson. He's been awesome this year, and they play the same position. They're both that combo 3-4 guy. Cam's a senior, Roy Default's seniors. But Luke May hasn't played well this year, and they're starting true big men when their roster is so perfectly designed to go small. And I know that Roy doesn't really do this, but to me, I always want to have coaches that just go with the flow of the roster and adjust around that. So it's been frustrating. I understand why it's happening because Nasir Little has been he's been a problem on defense so far. It's just like a whirling dervish of out of position athleticism.
Exactly. And I think I brought him up just as a microcosm for the class, and that I just don't see the advanced intelligence as far as basketball comfort on the floor from him. He looks like more of a project. Player development in the NBA is going to be huge for him, but you can carry that over to some of the other prospects in this class. RJ, he has it at times, but he doesn't always fully utilize it. That's another question mark. Kevin Porter, we haven't seen him in a valuable setting. He's clearly talented. He's got the best live dribble game in the class by a good amount, but all he does is settle for step backs even when he has advantage situations. We haven't seen him make pick and roll reads, so you don't really know what to do with him. So that's kind of what I think about the class is there's talent, and there's talent at positions that are valuable. There's a lot of wing size players in this class, but we're not seeing anything. I don't think a lot of players have that safety to value floor that I really look for.
How many players do you think are worth a first round pick right now in this draft? Because I just went through. I have a top 100 coming. I'll let the listeners know. I have one coming on Monday. I filed it today on Friday. So how many guys do you look at and you think, hey, these guys I would be comfortable taking them with a first round pick?
Yeah, it's a great question. I haven't done an exercise like this yet, but I would guess it's probably less than 20. And last year, I think I had 27 or 28.
Yeah, I'm at 21. So you tend to be a little bit more stingy on that than I do. I'm at 21.
Yep, and that kind of just speaks to, again, it's unfortunate that this class came right after last class, where last class had the star level talent at the top, but it also had really nice depth. You had a lot of valuable players. Again, Kevin Huerter, I really liked. I had him 11th on my board. He went 19th. You had those kinds of players available, Melton going 46. I look at this draft, and I think we talked about this off the pod. It looks like there could be that player, but I'm not sure who it is. That's the problem.
Right. This is the draft where, I think Zion's number one, and it's Zion's probably going to be the best player in this draft. But if you told me that the next best guy in this draft went 16, in 2013 with Giannis, and then the next best guy went 25 or whatever Rudy Gobert did, that wouldn't surprise me at all. There are a lot of guys that are very talented. There are a lot of guys that are kind of projects that are very unproven in a lot of ways. And that's going to throw off the value of this draft, right? It's not that, Cole said, that it's going to be a bad draft. It's that it's a bad draft if you have to be the person who makes the decision on who to take.
Exactly right. And I think the Bowl thing is also really fascinating with the foot injury for a big. That kind of, I think, derailed a lot of the momentum there. A lot of people had him number 2 on their boards.
That is insane to me, by the way.
Yeah. I never got to that point, but honestly, in this class, I looked at it and I was like, well, it's not completely unjustifiable based on what we've seen. I wasn't there.
I think it's unjustifiable. I will be just totally honest with you. That guy cannot defend at all. He was one of the worst defenders I've watched all season.
Yeah, and I'm on board with you, by the way. I was more skeptical and suspect of him, but it's just one of those classes where Bull's a clear case of there's real talent there on offense, high level talent. But
if you told me he ended up being one of the 5 best centers offensively in the NBA, I would not be surprised.
Exactly. And so that's kind of what this class is there's talent, but what is the value of that talent? What is it doing, especially contributing to winning basketball? I think Zion is there. For me, he's the best. He's in the same tier of prospects since I've been doing the draft with Luka Doncic and with Ben Simmons. And I would put him ahead of Simmons. Him versus Doncic is very, very interesting to me. I'm not decided on that because they're so different.
I was going to say, they're two more different players.
Exactly. But I just find their contributions to winning, they do it in different ways, but they're both projected to be so high level. Do you prefer the Luka off the dribble shooting, which you can never really take away, or do you prefer Zion's athleticism, where if the jump shot doesn't develop, NBA schemes and smart coaches can take a lot of what Zion does away.
Yeah, you can take away the jump shot, but you can't take away him jump stopping and covering 10 feet with a jump stop. Like, it's just not, like, I feel like this is not something that you can take away from him.
Lateral, we did a little bit preseason. I'm kind of glad we touched on that, but I think that's his superpower, man. Like, his ability to explode. I did a tweet about this, and I just made a video about this on the Stepien, but like his horizontal burst, like he can jump cut like a running back. We have not seen that movement from like a player of his archetype, of his size. Like, that's why I think that he's going to be able to navigate around bodies better than a lot of these guys who are like over the top players. They have to utilize their strength to dislodge guys. Zion can get around you too, which is just super impressive.
Yeah, like college refs have like no idea what to do with him. Like that game last night against Texas Tech, the foul call fouled him out. Like, he just spun so quickly that there's no way that the guy could get in front of him and have legal guarding position to get a charge, and they called it anyway because like Zion just kind of barreled through him because he's stronger than him. You know, like stuff drives me crazy. Stuff drives me absolutely crazy. Who are some of the guys that like are lower in this draft? Because like I had to again do this top 100 thing, and I've been like trying to find guys that I even like. Right. So like two guys I like Admiral Schofield and Ty Jerome a little bit. Like I think that both of those guys are NBA players, and that makes me happy. Like that makes me excited about them in relative terms. I have Admiral, like I'll just throw this out there as a preview. Like I have Admiral 24, I have Ty Jerome 25. Okay. Very, very different players. I think Admiral's going to be able to defend at a high level. I think he's really able to shoot it. The differentiation with him though now is that he can create off the dribble a little bit. The fact that he can attack closeouts now and like actually handle the ball makes me think that it's going to be harder for offenses to not pay attention to him, basically.
Yeah, so I have a guy in that range. Actually, on Tennessee, I really like Grant Williams a lot. I think he's a really good basketball player, like one of the best decision makers I've seen all year. Just kind of an awkward build at his size, but really strong, can leverage position. Just seeing guys like that, even if he's a situational player, I love his instincts. I love his IQ defensively, and he's got a little bit of shot making ability, and that's kind of intriguing. So I think he's kind of like maybe this drafts Gary Clark, not the same player, of course, but it's just somebody who could potentially fall all the way out of the draft if he declares and go undrafted. But I think he can make a team because he's super smart. He has that functional strength, and he has some skill level.
Yeah, by the way, I have him like top 35, top 40, something in that range right now. Like I buy into him as everything but a shooter. I don't really buy into him as a shooter yet, but you know, he's shot 77% from the foul line. If you buy into that over the last 2 years, maybe you think he can do that. Maybe you think he can shoot a little bit. Dylan Windler is a guy that I'm a little bit higher on than some. I've written so extensively about Windler that I feel like like around the bend on him. Freshman, like, are there any, like, should we talk about Quentin Grimes actually? Because Quentin Grimes is one of the most like interesting ones in general. You had him like top half of the lottery coming into the year, right?
Yeah, I think I had him like 8 or 9. I was a little bit more skeptical than some, but I also was higher on him than a lot of people. Yeah,
like I had him at 6, I think. I had him at 6 coming into the year. And I have him out of the first round right now. It's funny, I was texting you a couple, maybe a week ago. And I was like, you know what? Like, I think I would still take him at like 20 or 25 in this draft. And if I was a team like Boston and had 4 first-round picks, I would still do that. I just buy the upside still, even though he's really struggled to really find a role with Kansas. Like, it was a bad scheme fit from day one. It was a bad fit because Bill Self was always going to love Devon Dotson like a lot more than him, because Dotson just has that defensive ability. He has that kind of that energy level, you know, that Quentin doesn't really have. And if Quentin's not making shots and you have Devon at the point guard position, what do you do? Right? Like, what do you do in that scenario then with Grimes? Because you're not going to give him the ball and have him like create. You can run like side pick and rolls for him, but that's not really Bill Self's offense. So I don't know what to do with Quentin Grimes right now. Like, part of me wants to say this guy should like transfer and just like leave Kansas, basically, because I don't think that a lot of what he does makes sense for them, and it doesn't seem like he's going to make an impact now anyway.
Yeah, when you started this conversation about how many guys would you feel comfortable taking in the first round, he is not one of them for me. I am not comfortable, and I think that you touched on this via text, and like the confidence issues are disconcerting.
Yeah.
Like, I understand it based on the situation. Like, I agree it's not an optimal situation for him, but the fact that it's derailed him this much, I think you have to look at that as an impactful input in the class. And like, I don't think his skill level is outrageous. Like, we talked about this again, like his handling, it's fine. Like, he has control, but he's not explosive really in and out of his moves. Maybe he was a little bit more at lower levels, but on tape in college, like, he hasn't really gotten that separation. His deception isn't great. Like, outside of shooting off the catch at times, like, he hasn't really done anything. And I was hiring.
By the way, if you take out that first game where he went 6 of 10 from 3 against Michigan State and everyone was super fucking excited about him, he's shooting, wait for it, 21.7% from 3.
Oh God, I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah. It's bad.
Okay.
It's bad.
So I think a lot of people were high on him after the Hoop Summit. I can attest to that because I was there, and he was legitimately good at Hoop Summit. Like, all the practices, him and Darius Garland were probably the 2 best players over the course of that week.
By the way, to get invited to Hoop Summit, you have to be really fucking good.
Yes. So it's not like this is coming from nowhere as far as his pedigree. Like, he has put stuff on tape that's alluring, and he's done it in front of, like, executives. So that's why you see him, start out the season in the top 10. But he has not played like it at all. Like, I would still probably take him in the second round over some of these guys just as a developmental guy, like you noted. But there isn't really one thing about his game that has popped for me. Like, I liked his instincts at Hoop Summit. I thought he showed some pick and roll craft as a passer and stuff like that. But if he's not going to perform at any kind of acceptable level, what can you really do with him?
So let me say this. I actually think that his deception was pretty good at high school levels. Like, he had like a very nice change pace dribble. He had a great in and out dribble. His crossover right to left was pretty good, I thought. I actually thought he could get separation at the AAU level. The thing is, if you look back at the numbers now of what he was doing at AAU level, he had a negative assist turnover ratio, if I remember correctly. His shooting was not great, and the shooting not being great is translated. I actually like his mechanics shooting. Like, I think that at some point he's going to be fine shooting basketball. It's just, I think that the confidence, questions have sunk in now. Might be like the first time where he hasn't been successful, like, based off of what everyone is telling him, maybe, in his career. And I think that is seeping into his game a little bit. And you mentioned the defense too. Actually, I don't remember if you mentioned this like a second ago, but we've talked about it enough to where, like, I just know I'm with you on the fact that his defense hasn't been great. It's been kind of rough so far. You'd think that 6'5", 6'7.5" wingspan, 210 pounds, like, very physical kid, that he'd be a pretty good defender early in his career. He's just not that yet. It seems like he's thinking too much out there on both ends right now. Like, He doesn't exactly know where to go. And like, he knows where to go, but because he's thinking about where to go, it takes him too long to get there. I don't know, man. Like, I'm at the point where I still think that, like, there are teams that could take him late in the first round based off of what we've seen from him, right? Like, every NBA team has access to the AAU tape that I have access to, right? Like, I watched 20 games that he played on the AAU level, like in the Adidas circuit. And if you go back through, you can run through Adidas Nations tape. You can run through some, like, other Adidas. Was he at Eurocamp? Do I remember correctly? Was he one of the kids at Eurocamp?
Can't recall. He didn't pop for me there, but I did watch that tape. I can't remember if he was.
Yeah, and like FIBA, where he won MVP coming into this year. Like, it's the craziest thing too. Like, he had momentum coming into the year. Like, he won the MVP of the FIBA U18 Americas. Like, he was rolling coming into the year, and it's a bummer. It's a huge bummer. I think that there are teams that would still bet on. And I think he's going to kill workouts, by the way, too, like if he was to declare. I think that there are still teams that would bet on the past sample of what we've seen from him and just hope that works.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And my allure with him was, like, he could be not a point guard, but like a de facto one, like kind of like what I saw with Melton, like that kind of role next to, let's say, Philadelphia at 33 took him and he played next to Ben Simmons. Philadelphia needs more guys who can play both sides of the floor. Like, that would be an interesting fit. But I haven't seen enough of the playmaking, enough of the handling ability as far as creating separation, all of that stuff to really project him with any kind of confidence. But that is what I initially was drawn to, is can he play the de facto point guard next to, like, a bigger kind of creator who's a primary? Yeah.
No, I think that's reasonable. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else, like, random that I think is interesting. Have you watched any? I told you Tyshawn Alexander was interesting. Have you watched any Tyshawn Alexander yet?
I have.
Are you as
he is
relatively in as I am?
I mean, his tape definitely pops. I mean, his athleticism on the ball, like some of his dribble moves, creating separation. I think it was the Gonzaga game that I watched, and he absolutely he destroyed Brandon Clark on a switch with this hesitation crossover. He got to the rim. The shooting looks legit as far as his ability to like take quick pull-ups and shoot a little bit off movement, off the catch. He's dynamic offensively. He's really skinny. He has problems defensively. It's going to be one of those things at the end of the year where I'm going to go back over his pick and roll possessions and look at how he makes decisions. But there's definitely some intrigue there.
Oh, you know what? We should talk about Brandon Clark real quick before we get out of here. So I have Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark is like the number 22 guy for me, where like I wouldn't typically have a first round grade on him, but like because this draft is what it is, he's like sitting at number 22 for me. And I was having a conversation with an NBA executive, and he just like posed the question to me like, okay, so do you think he's like a small ball 5, or do you think he is a 4 who like learns to shoot? And it stopped me, and I was like, well, I think that you kind of play both of those sides. And then like I really thought about it, and I was like, well, he's a lot better as like a weak side rim protector than he is as a primary. Like you want him rotating over, and a lot of the time like he's not gonna, if you have him as the 5, like he's probably not going to be that. He's probably going to have to leap and be a primary rim protector whenever a pick and roll guard gets middle penetration. And then he's not like quite a short roll playmaker yet, like, you know, Jordan Bell is, as an undersized, like underweighted center. So you basically do have to hope that he's going to shoot it. And like there's been development there, but like the percentages like aren't great. And now I'm like a little bit thrown on Brandon Clark too.
Yeah, I thought the hype got a little out of control. Like, I'm very high on Clark. I like him a lot. He's probably a top 20, top 25 guy for me for sure in this class.
Yeah, and like you have more I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I don't think he has all NBA defensive upside or something. That's gotten some build, and I just don't think he has the measurables. I mean, at a certain point, physical tools do matter. Like his lack of length hurts at times at the rim. Like his lack of size, he's not the strongest guy. He's just really good. Like you just take gambles on guys like that. Like, you know, top 20, top 25, especially in this class. Like I don't care too much about position. I agree with you. Like he's probably going to have to shoot. He's definitely not a full-time center, but he's kind of one of those tweener types that I tend to gamble on just because he's incredible defensively as far as his team defense awareness. Not the switch defender I think that a lot of people think, but I do think he's very good there in space. And I do like his dive ability, but again, that's more of a full-time 5 role. I just think he's a really good basketball player, and that's how you have to analyze him. It's kind of like Grant Williams. They're both not perfect fits in the NBA. They're just both really good. Yeah,
like Andre Robertson played like a reasonable amount of the 4 when he was at Colorado State. Like they had Josh Scott in the middle, and then they would play what the hell was that guy's name? Xavier Johnson, I think, is the guy. Not Pitts Xavier Johnson. It was like a 6'6" like stretch wing kind of guy. And like Robertson would play a little bit of the 4, but they're very different because Robertson didn't derive a lot of his value from rim protection. He derived a lot of his value from being an awesome rebounder who could defend on the perimeter. Clark is kind of the opposite way. Like he derives a ton of his value as a weak side rim protector who can be like a primary rim protector at this level, and then is like a fine like defender in space. He's like I would say he's a little bit more than a fine defender in space, but like on the NBA level, like you said, he's not going to be this elite defender in space on the perimeter. So I saw some people give that comparison, and I don't really agree with it, I guess is where I'm going with this. I don't really know I just don't know what the role is. You know what? It's hard for me to, I agree with you. Like he just plays basketball, and I don't really, like it's hard because you go off the archetypes all the time, right? Like that's a big thing for you is you like to find role archetype, and I don't know what his is.
Exactly. And I think like that has burned me at times at the past, and I'm trying to get more into just viewing guys as basketball players in that kind of spectrum. But yeah, at a certain point, you have to look at guys like that and say, well, how do they translate? What are their roles? But he's a guy that you can just play. But I also think I don't really agree with having him, if you're really high on him, and have him like 15th or something. I don't agree with having someone like Juwan Morgan like 90th or something. You know what I mean? Like I don't think the difference there is like crazy. Like Juwan Morgan's, he's one of my underrated guys. I think he's pretty damn good, man. Like he's improved this year as a shooter. He's good.
Yeah, I have him at like 50 or 55 or so right now. And I think that might be like low, to be honest. Like,
I think I have him in the first.
Do you really?
Yeah, I like a lot of what all my notes this year. Like I watched a lot of Romeo, but all my notes on Morgan this year are mostly positive. Like I think that if the shooting is real, he's an easier projection in many cases than Brandon Clarke is because of the shooting. I know he hasn't shot well in the past, but mechanics-wise, I trust Morgan more than I trust Clarke.
I agree with you mechanics-wise. I just don't know if either of them can shoot. Just like straight up, like I don't
really 100%
agree. Buy into either of them shooting. And if you don't buy into Morgan shooting, I think like 55 is like the right spot for him. The athleticism, that's actually a good question though. Like, because Morgan, I think, is a little bit more trustworthy as a perimeter defender to me than Clarke.
He's also stronger. Like his core, he's built in a certain way. I think he can probably leverage position. Like Clarke's a better leaper, of course. Like, he's a better like vertical spacer and stuff. But I think is like girth wise, I think Morgan has a more intriguing build. Yeah, and Morgan's a little bit better of a passer too. Yeah, actually, Morgan was a guy, and then the other guy is Vic Law at Northwestern. I went back and watched a bunch of him, and I have him in the top 60 right now too. 6'7", 7-foot wingspan, 40% 3-point shooter. I'm not 100% sure I buy the quickness on defense yet, but like he's someone that I'm really going to go through with like a fine tooth comb coming up here in the next, I guess like once Big Ten play starts. Like he's someone that I think could shoot up into like late first-ish round. Okay. Yeah, I have one more guy, and this guy's way more obvious, but I just think he's still getting undervalued a little bit, and that's Trae Jones. Like, I know you tweeted a while back, he's a legit first-round guy. I think he's like a legit top 20 guy. Like, he's really – like, whenever he plays in a big game, like, he was awesome last night on defense. He had, like, 6 steals. He was all over, ball pressure-wise. He's super smart, makes great decisions. We've seen – I don't think this is a direct comparison, but we see guys like Fred VanVleet, Monte Morris, like, kind of smaller as point guards, and Trae's a little bit bigger and plays bigger than that. But the super smart decision makers, if he can shoot, I think he's going to return a lot of value in this class, especially if he goes late first, early second. Yeah, being an adult on the floor really helps when you're a point guard. Like I was talking to like a couple people or a couple guys who run a G League team, and I was just like, yeah, like point guards are hard to find. Just going out and finding adults really helps with developing wings and developing bigs like that. Like point guards, like I feel like the backup point guard position in the NBA, you and I have talked about this for a while, like it's been really bad for a while, and now it's starting to get better, and that like deficiency has kind of crept down to the G League. If you look around like G League teams, the point guard position, like there are very few young point guards. Like Trayvon Duval like might be the best young point guard right now. It's hard to find them. And I think Trae Jones, just guys who can handle the ball and be adults out there, really help. Yeah, and he's better than Trayvon, obviously. I think he's a good prospect. He's a legit prospect. I'm looking at a mock draft right now. I've Trae at 18. Yeah, so. I love that. Yeah, I'm on board with that. I'm looking at a mock right now, and he's 29th. I'm also looking at a mock that has Jarrett Culver in the second round. That's insanity. I won't name names, but that's crazy. I think that Jones is going to be, if he's valued that way, he's valued as like a late first, early second. I think that's one of the safer picks in the class. I'm now officially guessing what mock it is, and yes, I was right. Yes, that mock also has Jalen Hands. This is a top 35 pick, and oh boy, Jalen Hands. Last question. Good God. Last question from me for you. Do you think there's anybody in this class, you can name whoever, that you think's a little overrated right now? Sure. Yeah, that'll be a fun question. My answer would have been Bol Bol before this foot injury like kind of derailed a little bit. Guy that I think it's hard to be overrated in this class, I think. Because like no one is really excited about anyone. Like some people still have Charles Bassey very high, and like oh dear. I see, but like I'm starting to like, so like I moved Charles Bassey down to like 40 on my most recent, on the update before this one, and then I went back and like he dropped like 21 and 9 on Daniel Gafford in Arkansas, and like if you look back through, like he's actually had some really good performances this year. I have him at like 35. Like I don't buy the like player archetype, but he's just like 6'10", 7'3" wingspan, pretty good rim protector, tough. I think that he's like a backup center. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I like how a lot of the times he plays within himself. He has more of a traditional approach, but I don't think he does anything that's super valuable. Like he's not the most bouncy athlete. His rotations are mostly okay, but they're not like high level, and he has some shooting upside. We've seen that at lower levels, but I don't really buy it as like an impact. So he's just one of those maybe backup developmental centers, and I don't think he has the same kind of intrigue as like a Jarrett Allen in that respect. Yeah, here's one. There's like a huge separation between like analytical minds and like just like basketball like culture people.
like people who just like watch basketball and like look at guys who are super highly skilled, I guess is the way to put it. Naz Reid, I'm like starting to go like not be in on Naz Reid the more I watch him. He's very, very bad defensively. He's like a mess defensively.
And like he has legit offensive talent. Like he can step back and hit like a three off the dribble. Like his ball handling coordination is pretty remarkable for a player his size.
It's truly special, I think.
Yes, but his like passing, I think his passing is underrated by the stats. He does have better vision than his assist stats would indicate. But I just don't trust that guy making decisions. I think that's the key between him and someone like Jonte Porter, who's just a much smarter player, and he executes so much at such a higher level. Like those guys were kind of compared a lot pre the season, and I got it from like a skill standpoint. Like Jonte can dribble, pass, and shoot, and in theory, Naz Reid can too. I'm not intrigued by his defensive decision making, and I'm definitely not intrigued by his offensive decision making. Yeah,
like he is a guy that will go earlier than what I am willing to select, I guess is the way to put it.
And that guy for me is Romeo Langford. I think that there is intrigue. Like I get it. His ball handling control is actually pretty good. Like he can get really low with the ball. I've been impressed
before you go further, let me ask you a question. Is there a bigger swing skill for any player in this draft than Romeo Langford being able to shoot?
On first look, no.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's 100% the skill. Continue on where you are in Romeo.
What I don't like about him is we talked about the lack of deception handling the ball with Grimes. You really see that with Romeo. Like, he can dribble really well, but he just can't create any kind of separation. And the shooting, of course, like we talked about the mechanics in the past as far as he keels his wrist back a lot of tension there. I'm not sure about the consistency on pull-ups or on off the catch. He's going to have to be a difficult shot maker type, I think. And he's going to have to shoot the ball, but he's going to have to be like a dynamic pull-up guy. Like I thought he could be. I never thought he was this caliber of shooter. But like a bigger version of like CJ McCollum to me was like that would be his peak. And I don't think he's nearly that level of shooter. So if you don't have that, the allure with him is like he's 6'6". He's a legit 6'6". He brings combo guard skills to legit positional size. But if you can't shoot, you can't create separation off the dribble. He's gotten back cut a lot this year. I liked some of his defensive tape at the beginning, so I'm not as low as some people are there. But I just don't know what he does that's really valuable, and I think it's going to get overdrafted.
Oh, the funny thing is, like, I actually think he's been a positive defensively compared to what he was. Like, if you watched him in high school,
sure.
Oh my God, it was, oh boy, it was rough.
Yeah.
I'm fine with where he's at defensively. Like, I think 6'6", 6'10" wingspan, 6'11" wingspan. Like, he's actually learning how to utilize his length and be a useful on-ball defender. He's been pretty good at utilizing that length within the pack line where he's like able to close in to like that elbow extended area and then recover out to shooters whenever he gets kicked out on. That stuff really has been solid, I think, for him. So I'm comfortable there. And the other thing with him is that he has a tight handle with both hands. Like he can drive left and he can drive right. It's just all straight line, like you said. Like he has no shake. He has no. He has the actually reasonable change of pace, I think. Like he'll kind of lull someone to sleep, then blow by. But it's just like there's not enough differentiation there in terms of changing the angle of the defender's feet. And he's always going to be a guy, I think, that needs the jump shot to be a threat, to be a real offensive threat in the NBA. And that's why I say that I'm with you whenever you agreed with this. His jump shot is the biggest swing skill in this draft. If he can shoot the ball, he's probably the 5 guy for me, to be honest. Like if he could legit knock down 38% of his threes, I think he's the 5th best player in this draft.
And I don't think that's unreasonable, frankly. I think that there's some merit to that. And this is, again, a microcosm of the class is like we don't have a clear depiction. Like it doesn't look that promising. Like his shooting numbers aren't great this year. The tape isn't outstanding. Like he's kind of like a streak shooter to me. He can make really hard shots. Like if you watch him at lower levels, like he can make like a fadeaway 3. You know what I mean? Like he's capable of doing that stuff. But when you really break down how he wins by overwhelming smaller players with his size. Like he engages in contact way too early because he's not beating guys cleanly with his first step, with his dribble moves. He really is just like floatering and overwhelming guys over the top. And I don't think that role works as well at the next level. Like he's a 2 guard to me, and I don't use traditional kind of nomenclature for positions, but you want him with the size advantage. That's where he thrives. If he doesn't have that, I'm much more worried about him. But you're right. The shot is clearly the input.
Yeah, I have him at 10 right now. I think there's a good chance he goes higher than that on draft day.
Okay.
I would not obviously take him higher than that. But
like 4 or 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think that I'm with you on that. Go ahead.
No. That's it for me. I was going to say, like, I think 4 or 5 is too rich for my blood. I don't see enough. I don't see the upside to really justify that either. Like, if he pans out and shoots, I think he's potentially an effective starter, but I don't know if he has the upside to really gamble that high on.
Yeah. Cole, that's it. We're done. That was the first podcast back. How you feeling?
Feeling good, man. We kept it under 2 hours barely, which is actually that's improvement compared to the prospect podcast we did that we had to take 2 hours to do like the Lakers. So improvement.
I swear that this will not happen all the time, but I feel like people listen to us like kind of come to expect it, so it's okay this time. Tell the people what you've got going on coming up here.
As always, check out thesepian.com. I just made 2 videos on Zion Williamson, one on his offensive floor value, kind of just broke down how I expect him to be utilized at the next level, how the lack of shooting impacts his role, but how he's one of the few players that I think can actually function at a high level if he doesn't shoot. And then the ceiling video kind of gives comparative examples about pull-up shooting. Really interesting case with Blake Griffin, who's starting to shoot pull-up threes at an insanely high level in like his 9th season, which is crazy. So just looking at a bunch of his offensive inputs and trying to gauge value there. And as always, continue to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, I would say follow Cole on Twitter too, because he puts out a lot of his work just on Twitter for free.
Yes.
That always is nice. So go follow him at Cole Zwicker on Twitter. You will see his name in the show notes, obviously. So it's just no space, Cole Zwicker. I have a big board coming out on Monday. I wrote about Ja Morant for Thursday. I wrote about Lou Dort earlier, I think on Monday. I wrote about Brandon Clark last week. Go read all of that at The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. I enjoy doing what I do. So it'd be great if I could continue to do that. We'll be back later next week at some point. Obviously, the holidays are coming up. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to handle that situation yet. This might be the last podcast before Christmas. I actually don't think I have too many advertisers for next week, so I think we might actually be okay. If it is, happy holidays, everyone. Hope you all have a great Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever y'all celebrate. Have a great holiday. Until next time, though, we'll talk soon. Bye.